and welcome back to a special episode of Loss It Down. I'm sure you've seen it now, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. This is our mock draft episode. First time we're doing this, we're going to get a lot of loyal listeners in here, so it's a really fun opportunity to get to hear a fan perspective on the draft. So before we jump into that, though, how are you boys doing? We're doing it a little different this week. So what, it's a Friday night we're recording this, coming out Monday. How you guys doing going into the weekend?
Great. We got playoff basketball on. The Cavs are about to start here in a half hour. Wow, excuse me. That's just foul like I sound, but I'm just getting ready to gamble here all weekend.
Yeah, this is the time of year. NBA, NHL playoffs. Next week, who knows? Maybe you take a little what we got here. You sprinkle some NFL draft props out there. But David, how about you? We'll float it over to you. How you doing, buddy? Long week, but you're going into the weekend.
Yeah, man, I'm doing all right. Today was a rough day, but overall good week, and very excited to relax this weekend.
Absolutely, that's perfect. I got one thing for you before we throw it in, because you guys have to, I have to believe that other people are disgusted and frustrated as I am. Are you guys as tired as I am about every single time there's a commercial break right now? You have to see Miss Freddie Mercury in an Amazon commercial.
Yes, okay.
Worst commercial I've ever seen in my life. It pisses me off, and I have no reason.
Oh my god, and it's miserable. And
like,
you know
what's
what?
the purpose of it? Do you want to ship something?
And you know what? I'm just gonna say it. I don't care what day and age you are in. That chick is getting made fun of in high school. Regardless, I don't care what high school you're going to. That girl's gonna get made fun of.
Bullying builds character.
Yes, bring back bullying.
It comes on now. Every single commercial in the NHL playoffs, I'm all fired up. It's like going into overtime, and then I have Miss Yellow Jacket.
Cats.
Like, I don't want to.
The song is stuck in my head, and I want to like
shave.
the song, but it's just you're just mad because she has a better stash than you, right, Wally?
It's thicker than mine, and she's just straight up embracing it. She's like, "Oh yeah, it's fine." Instead of just taking 13 seconds to do the quick little shave job, I have to watch her dance around in school.
Why couldn't she have just gotten razors from Amazon with the jacket? And then I'd be like... No kidding,
yeah.
Because
you got the gap tooth. You're fine.
Yeah, dude, Michael Strahan made that cool. So I'm not really worried about the gap tooth anymore.
Me neither. I think it's actually, if anything, the right way you do it, it's kind of an attractive uniqueness thing.
But you get a razor with the jacket, and then all of a sudden it's like fresh shave, feel good, dress good, look good. Come on.
Yeah, I guess she thinks she's going Dion. It's just, it ain't working. No. It ain't working.
You're not that guy, pal.
You're not that guy.
I mean, the commercial's working, though. We're talking about it.
Is it working? Because, I guess. I mean, tell me that someone is either shipping Amazon or not shipping Amazon because of this commercial. Like, isn't that the point of a commercial?
All I'm saying is that hairy chick is dancing for, like, sweatshops in China. And is that what you want working for the commercial? Fucking Amazon.
I guess we are talking about it, David. That's a good point. But my whole frustration is...
Was that worse than the oh man, the Plovid, Plaxov?
If it's COVID, Paxlovid.
Paxlovid commercials during the March Madness. That was right up there. That was every single commercial.
Well, that reminds me of what? It was like cherry vanilla Coke or orange vanilla Coke 2 years ago for March Madness.
Yeah, and you're like, all right, let's wrap her up.
Yeah, except I eventually was like, maybe I want an orange vanilla Coke. I don't want to ship Amazon right now.
Yeah. I kind of need some stuff.
Well, real quick, we're going to just talk one thing, and then we'll throw it into the mock draft. But today, weird news. 5 players, among them, Jamison Williams, second year, should be standout wide receiver for the Detroit Lions. He's suspended because he bet, not on the NFL, though. He bet on other sports in an NFL facility. How dumb is this? The NFL is sponsored by gambling now. They're pushing gambling, and if you bet Turkish soccer like Stephan would in the Lions facility, you're forfeiting 6 game checks. How dumb is that?
This is, this coming fresh off the Calvin Ridley, soon to be reinstatement here over his suspension of a year was directly with football. But yeah, your sponsorship with the NFL. Now they're pushing the limits, not gambling on the NFL specifically, but within the facility. And just 6 games. It's like I feel like you need to take it a little bit more seriously because at the end of the day, it's either you need to go full blown or you don't at all. But dumb move by these young 21, 22-year-olds that are cocky with a lot of money that just want to place a 3-leg parlay because it's a no-sweat bet because DraftKings offering that right now.
Well, I'm just saying, I don't know how this goes because we're not NFL players, believe that or not. I know we kind of give that aura around the three of us.
Breaking
I know
news.
We have that vibe. However, it's just amazing to me that, like, do you think these players for sure knew you couldn't bet, whether it be March Madness, whether it be an NBA game, like in the facility? Like, do you think it's that hardcore that these guys know you can't even bet other sports?
Probably not. They were all probably told. They were all probably communicated the rules, but
they don't care.
It's still, well, they don't care, but it's still so new, right? Like you're,
yeah.
And what classifies a facility? Is he walking out of the building betting on something? Like what?
The team plane counts.
Right,
like how ridiculous is that?
Right. So I have a hard time.
Get the incognito mode.
Well, you can't put it in incognito mode and still bet. That's the problem.
That's true.
Yeah, you gotta log into your location to the betting. I'm more curious on how the NFL pulls that data and knows. But yeah. I don't think it's that serious. It'd be more serious if they were betting on the NFL, in my opinion. But Roger Goodell doesn't call me up.
Obviously, your Lions now, one pride out there. They had 3 of the players suspended today, and that's what's frustrating because it's like, it may be that locker room, it was like one guy who starts gambling, then it turns into a, hey guys, let's talk about it, let's gamble together, and all of a sudden your cool little young wide receiver circle is doing NFL jail time for 6 weeks. Remember, Ray Rice was suspended for 2 games, but not a big deal. We will throw it now into what you guys are coming to listen for. We want to thank all of the people that came on. It's been a really fun, stressful, but it's been a very fun week getting all of you guys on. We appreciate it. And hopefully next year we'll be even more prepared. We'll get even more people on. And this show's going to be even better than ever before. But with that being said, Dylan Watts, we'll throw it to him with the number 1 overall pick.
Sharp-dressed man.
And now we're getting ready to start. It's official. Our first pick is coming up. Carolina Panther diehard, the Thurs, as Stephen loves to give you a little hard time about. I see the grimace. But Dylan, it's been a long time coming. It's great to finally have you on. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Happy to be here. Is this when people say long-time listener, first-time caller or whatever? But excited to be here with the 3 of y'all. Looking forward to a fun night of drafting.
Well, you even dropped the y'all. We know we're ready for Carolina's pick right here. Without further ado, I'll throw it over to you. Let's hear it.
Ladies and gentlemen, with the first pick of the 2023 Loss of Down mock draft, the Carolina Panthers select Bryce Young, quarterback, Alabama.
There it is. We get the quarterback off the board. Was it always Bryce Young for you?
All right, are we talking for me?
For you. Let's hear for you. Was it always Bryce Young?
No way. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. When I look at all of them, it's kind of a sketchy situation all around. You can kind of pick apart any of them, but I think you kind of got to go with Vegas because when the lines start moving, you know what's going on. Now, I do think that Vegas jumped the gun a little bit. I actually don't know that it's like Bryce Young knew he was getting picked by the Panthers. That's why he canceled all his visits. It's probably more likely that the Texans told him, hey, if you're here, we got you. And he was like, well, the rest of it doesn't matter then. But I think you got to go with that. 3 weeks ago, it was Stroud. I think everyone thought it was Stroud. You saw how the coaches were playing with him at the Ohio State, practice day, and everyone was all chippy, and it was great. But Young's the one with kind of the most swag, the most talent. So it's nice to see it. He was the guy that if we didn't take, I feel like I would most regret. Even if he sucks. I mean, 3 years from now, we'll know if this was a good deal or not.
Highest ceiling for sure.
any of them might blow, but he's got the traits you want. He can throw the ball. He can do whatever he needs to do with the ball. He can create plays. So I'm excited about it.
Now, how quickly? I know you have the number 1 overall pick, so you're a keen person to talk to about way too early prediction of how he can be plugged in and make your offense look. With Bryce Young, what does that picture look like? The teals, right? The all teals, first and foremost.
Well, you guys might not have caught this because it was like the Panthers nerd Twitter, but we actually changed the color blue this year on the uniforms. That's going to get a little fun. It's going back to the original blue, which is probably like the smallest difference in the world. But
you pulled a Cleveland Browns, is what you're saying.
I was going to say, Panthers he knows all about you.
All of Panthers Twitter lost their minds. They thought the jerseys were changing, and they're like, guys, it's literally like a shade off. But how's the offense going to look? I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I think you can kind of. We got the running back. We got an O-line. I think those are kind of 2 big pieces when you got a rookie quarterback coming in. You got a tight end who can catch some balls and Hurst, and that's good. You got some wide receivers that, they work. They're both good 2s. I don't think either of them's a 1, but like you've got an offense that you can make do with, and I think that's a good thing. I feel like most rookies kind of step into a shit show, so it's nice that he can come into at least something. How's it going to look? I don't know. I've played this game back in my head so many times. Like I can see, we're in a bad division, so we can easily, do great, win the divisional championship, all that stuff. But is the offense going to be a high rolling thing? Probably not. It's going to take a couple years. We're going to run the ball, probably do a little RPO offense for a couple years, figure it out. But I think it'll be good. I think you're probably looking at like a Tua. You're not looking at like a Burrows type deal. He's going to manage the offense. He's going to do good. The team will look solid. We'll score points, but I'm not expecting 27 points a game.
There it is. We got our first quarterback off the board with that first pick. Dylan Watts looks good. People at home, make sure you're looking at YouTube. This man is in a tux for the first overall pick. Dylan, thank you so much for coming on. Like I said, it's been a long time coming. I'm sure it won't be the last time either.
I hope it's not. And I guess I just respectfully request that Wally continue to text me because Stephan's not going to invite me on. So it's all up to you.
Oh, don't be blasting me. You're always welcome, buddy.
Fucking calling out his boy. He's calling out his boy right now.
He's
Dylan.
Don't make me blacklist you.
Next year, man, we're doing the draft again. Panthers, we're already booking you in. If you wear a tux for one, you're ours forever. So welcome back. You'll be picking again next year. Hopefully for your sake, maybe in the, teens, maybe low 20s.
I was about to say, it's going to be really cool for y'all as a podcast when next year the same guy comes on in a tuxedo for the first overall pick. So,
well, perfect. Dylan, you're the man. Thanks so much for coming on. And that means we're going to throw it over to David for the second pick in the Houston Texans. Talk about sharp-dressed man, Stephen. You said it going into that. Dylan with the tux. Make sure you're looking at the YouTube. Man is looking good. And Bryce Young off the board, which means now the Houston Texans are on the clock, and David Klaben is going to be the one here now picking for them. And we saw this past week, odds are starting to go up where Will Levis is potentially the favorite at number 2. David, is that where you're going here?
Absolutely not. With the second overall pick in the loss of down draft, I am taking Will Anderson Jr. for the Texans.
Oh,
and
I thought you were going to say Levis for a second.
No, Will Levis, they might take him in real life, but in my fantasy world, the best defensive edge in the draft is the best way to go. The blueprint's out there. Getting an edge, building out your roster before you get your quarterback is the fastest way through the rebuild. I think Anderson's probably as productive as a defensive lineman can get in a 3-year career. I think he put up over 200 pressures in 3 years. He's explosive. I think he's 6'5", 250 pounds. He's about all you can ask for in an edge rusher.
All right, so I have to ask the question, Jalen Carter. So Will Anderson might be the most sure thing in this draft, but the belief is among NFL scouts the highest upside defensively is Jalen Carter. Were you tempted to take a gamble on him here, or given his history, you just thought it would be safer to go Will Anderson?
I'd have taken Jalen Carter if we're talking about a different team in this position. When you're as bad as the Texans are, you really can't risk the history of Jalen Carter, the off the field stuff. I think Jalen Carter is gonna be a fantastic NFL player. He might go right off the board next. We'll see. But I think he's a phenomenal player. If I'm the Texans, I need sure things with my draft picks, and I can't. You just can't throw the fog of an off-field problem in there.
It's fair.
So I'll ask the other obvious question. Why not C.J. Stroud here and just going for the edge rusher? It feels like young Stroud have been the 1-2 basically since last draft.
I don't.
Defense.
I don't disagree with that. That Stroud might be a better pick for a QB needy team like the Texans, but the worst thing you can do. This isn't a QB draft where I'm getting Andrew Luck or RG3 1-2 back to back. I'm getting sure things at quarterback, right? I'm getting what I think will be a solid quarterback in the NFL, maybe even proves me wrong as an elite quarterback, right? But that's a lot of risk for a team. Again, for a team like the Texans, the worst thing you do is throw a quarterback like that behind little to no offensive line, little to no weapons, little to no defense, and a totally new head coach. I have a hard time picking a quarterback that isn't like an Andrew Luck style prospect if the rest of your team is that bad. Build out your draft, build out your team without getting players that are going to significantly affect your win column this coming year, and then come back next year with a high pick, draft your quarterback if you did well in this draft, and let's go from there. It's been a blueprint. We've watched 2, 3, 4 teams do it now where you build out your team and then go get your quarterback like in the last year of you being just a very bad team.
And Davis Mills is perfectly, like, he's a Band-Aid quarterback until they can get a good quarterback in the future. So I actually don't hate that pick. We'll see if it happens. Obviously, Vegas boards are up in the air right now on Houston, which leads us into Arizona, where yours truly is going to be selecting for the Cardinals. And David, you kind of laid an Easter egg. So here it goes. With the third pick of the 2023 LOD mock draft, I have the Arizona Cardinals selecting Jalen Carter, defensive tackle out of Georgia. There's a quiet clap. I like you, Stephen. Appreciate it. So,
and I hope you have the claps going in on these two.
Oh, I feel good about it. I'll clap for myself if I need to. So I'll just be short and sweet with this. I think this is probably your best or most talented player in this draft. And I simply don't think Arizona's picking at 3. And because of that, I think they're playing that The Office chicken with Houston right now to see who's going to move first. Because I think they both want to have their cake and eat it too. They want Will Anderson and they want to draft him at 4. And it's a matter of who's going to be the one to trade with Indianapolis. I think that in the event they go 3, very unlikely, I think Jalen Carter just makes too much sense.
I completely agree. I was going to ask you if you thought they were going to trade down versus getting Jalen Carter, but almost to your point, they can still get the 2 top defensive players and one of the 2 top defensive players in the draft if they trade down to Indy spot. Even if they trade a little bit further, I don't know. Some of those teams don't necessarily need an edge once you get to the lower 10, or lower 10s, I guess is how you would say it. But I'm sure they can get their guy still.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I don't know. They can probably still get their guy still. But I actually love that pick if you're forced to keep Arizona at 3 like we forced you to keep.
Yeah, no trades allowed. Is this pick a anti-Kyler Murray pick? Because at 3, you'd think maybe bolster the offensive line and have a stretch at just being at that number. But you're going defense. Are you expecting to maybe foreshadow you wanting to move on from Kyler?
This guy right here, people that haven't listened to the pod lately, I think I've said it. I think Kyler Murray has played his final game with the Arizona Cardinals, and this is a full-on tank job. Tankville, Glenville is happening this year. You take Jalen Carter, you hope that you get the 5th year, obviously, and next year, Drake May, Caleb Williams, we're talking best quarterback class since RG3 Andrew Luck. Why wouldn't you be putting your eggs in that basket and hopefully get something for Kyler Murray around the deadline, or hell, going into the draft next year?
Kirk Cousins was in that QB draft, by the way. Come on.
That's true. He ended up being the better quarterback for Washington after FedEx Field got the best of RG3's Achilles ACL, excuse me. Could have been the Achilles. He got hurt so much. However, that means now we are throwing into the 4th pick, where we're going to go to a Walsh buddy of ours, David, to Brian Craighead, picking as Chris Ballard in the Indianapolis Colts. We'll throw it to Brian now. And now we are going to welcome on, from Chicago. He's not a Colts fan, but he is today. He's our acting Chris Ballard. Brian, how are you doing?
I'm great. I'm basically Pat McAfee 2.0 right here. I'm very pumped. Excited to be here.
You really are. And you're looking great, too. Brian Craighead, for people listening at home, longtime friend of David and myself. He is a Browns fan, but no first-round pick. Makes it a little challenging. But the way this set up, we're going to throw it to you in a second. The Colts have the 4th pick, and we only have one quarterback gone. Without any other tips, I'm going to throw it to you, Brian. Why don't you take us away?
Yeah, I think sitting here, it's got to be a quarterback, especially with only one QB off the table. They'll probably have to trade up in reality to get their guy on the actual draft night. But in this LOD draft, I'm sitting here in my GM seat, and I'm pumped to go out and get my guy, C.J. Stroud. All the quarterbacks in this draft probably have some flaws. You can pick them there. You can nitpick here and there. But, he's a great pocket passer, can make all the throws, got the measurables. And I think this pick is about who can deal with adversity, because you're going to lose probably for the first time in your career, going back to college and high school. Can you deal with adversity and pressure both on the field and for C.J. Stroud on the field? There's a lot of questions about him dealing with, pressure and not having a clean pocket. He's got his boy Quentin Nelson there, though, to help him out. And I think this is ultimately an easy pick for me sitting here with only one QB off the board.
Yeah, this is probably, you said it, they'll probably have to move up to go get their guy. This is likely not how it actually plays out, but in this, it did. And you are Chris Ballard, and this felt like a home run pick, and you kind of drilled it right there. This is going to have to be a guy that's going to have to be able to deal with losing for a year or two, because this is probably going to be an ugly first season for whoever it is.
Probably. It's not a tough division, though. I know we got big expectations for Jacksonville down there, but outside of that, it's certainly they should have some easy games. So he can come in. I think whoever does draft him in the end, you got to watch out, get him some new idols, get him some new mentors there. He's out here naming some guys you might not love to hear if you're a Colts fan. Get him some cats and a male massage therapist or something, and keep him on the straight and narrow. You know what I mean?
There's the Cleveland Brown in there. I saw it. I could feel it there. But you're right. I mean, first of all, you're also going to have to probably go in day 2, day 3, and likely go and get some more weapons at wide receiver, too. Because beyond Michael Pittman, maybe Alex Pierce flashed, but there's a lot to be done there. But for Colts fans out there, they get their quarterback. Brian Craighead takes their quarterback. Is there anything else you want to add for this pick? Anything else, period, you want to add in general?
I think the biggest adjustment in the building is going to be with the training staff, not actually having a quarterback from this century. As my fellow GM down there in Jacksonville pointed out, they're used to having quarterbacks a couple of decades older and needing probably a stretcher after most games. So that might be the biggest adjustment in the building that they'll need to make.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, with all these L.A. medical people, you might be looking at Matthew Stafford coming in. You need to have the old folks home stay true to their roots in Indianapolis.
That or just go out and trade for Lamar Jackson, put this all to bed.
Well, that's perfect. Brian, thank you so much for coming on. We're going to throw it now to the 5th pick. David Klaben's going to be selecting for the Seattle Seahawks.
I'm glad I got in.
Let's go over there now. No kidding. By the way, it's baseball season. Always
Oh,
has
yeah.
been.
Baseball, I got to represent. I had to do some research on this one because I'm all focused in on the diamond over there.
That's what I'm talking about. Go Guardians, go Pirates.
Go Guard.
And thanks again, Brian. You're the man.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks again, Brian, for taking that. We have our second quarterback off the board now. And again, we're going to come back with one of us. David has drafted Seattle now as one of his teams he will be selecting for, which means here for pick number 5, David, what are you doing for Pete Carroll and John Snyder?
Ooh, with the 5th pick in the draft, I'm taking Tyree Wilson for Seattle.
Feels like a Seattle
it just does, and frankly, it's a good pick for them. I honestly, and this is where they might trade down because I think there are some positions they would trade down for. But if you're holding here, taking a versatile edge rusher who can play inside, outside, 6'6", 6'7", 280 pounds, just a monster on the D line. It feels like the right pick for Seattle here.
Well, I tell you what, too, is we picked Jalen Carter with that 3rd pick, but this is one of those players where I feel like if he's hanging around at 5, would you have gone him opposed to Tyree? Or do you think that you go with, again, the sure thing, a guy that you're not worried about in the locker room with Tyree?
No, Seattle is kind of the team I was talking about where they can actually take the risk, right, on Jalen Carter. I mean, they were a great team last year. They shore up some things in the draft, and they may be a playoff team that you actually want to bet on when we come to the wild card or divisional round. But I do think if Jalen Carter's there, if it plays out where there are a bunch of trades up early and Jalen Carter falls to them, I do think they select him over Tyree Wilson.
So a lot of people are believing that Seattle, because this is a very rare opportunity, a playoff team with the top 5 pick. I know that we now have seen C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young off the board, but it has been kind of speculated that Anthony Richardson would be a unique fit in Seattle because he could sit, and you'd expect him to sit a year or two behind Geno, who just signed that extension. Did you give any thought to taking a quarterback here, or do you think it was defense all the way?
I think it's defense all the way. I would never. And you're in Seattle's position unless you are truly upgrading at quarterback. Why would you select at 5 overall? Trade down if you're going to take a project quarterback. And Anthony Richardson, he's a project. He's not going to be a first day starter that's going to dominate, in my opinion. I could be very wrong. I'm willing to admit when I'm wrong. But you've got Geno. Geno looked unbelievable last year. If you build off of that, he's got quite a few years left in the NFL.
For sure. He's 30,
yeah,
I think?
I mean, just take what you got at quarterback. If he falls off a cliff, sure, you can say you make a mistake there, but I just don't think he's going to fall off a cliff. So build,
especially with those wide receivers.
Yeah, build off of an incredible season and draft around the talent you already have. And if it fails, it fails. But chances are it won't. Chances are you have a quarterback who's good enough to get you to the Super Bowl if you build a really talented team around him. So, I don't know why you wouldn't draft defense and start to shore up some of the bigger holes that you had last year.
Well, there you go. David's going edge at 5 for Seattle. We'll get another pick from him with Seattle later on. But now we're going to throw it on over, speaking of David, to the team he's kind of championed on this podcast, the Detroit Lions and Kyle Butson. So we'll throw it over there now. And now with the 6th pick in the draft, we welcome on Kyle Butson. You guys might remember him from last year coming on and talking about the Detroit Lions. And funnily enough, David has basically adopted this as his second team too. So this is a very pro-Lions podcast, Kyle. Really excited to see what you're doing with this pick here.
I'll be completely honest. I'm not totally convinced that the Lions will be sitting at 6, given the way the cards are falling. I really kind of see that they might go up or they might go down, depending on how those first couple picks go. But as the draft stands, I see with the 6th pick in the 2023 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Lucas Van Ness, defensive lineman, Iowa.
Hercules off the board. Might be earlier than what people think, but this is a guy that has a lot of that J.J. Watt kind of feel to him, where he might be a little raw at this point, but he's so freakishly strong and athletic. It feels like wherever he goes, he's got a very high floor. For your Lions, though, we saw last year, offense might not have been the problem. Defense, on the other hand, was rough to say the least. Is this defense no matter what for you at 6 if they stay there?
I think regardless, it's got to be defense. I know there's a lot of guys that are chirping for a quarterback if it's available. I don't like the fit. I like what we have in our quarterback room right now. We're taking care of the ball. We haven't signed a contract extension. I know it might be a problem next year, but I'm not looking to solve that problem in the first round this year. That's for sure. Now with what he offers, you're right. He might be a little raw. He played inside a little bit at Iowa. I think he's going to be playing outside with the Lions. I think the best thing too is a culture fit. That is a stout Iowa defense. Big Ten gritty football. That's a guy that Dan Campbell wants in his room.
So let me ask you 2 questions following that up, because I love your position on the quarterback room, but I want to throw 2 situations at you. Let's say that all 4 quarterbacks go off the board. There are some trades that happen 1 through 4, and the Lions are still at 6. Do you still take Lucas at 6, or do you take one of Tyree Wilson or Will Anderson Jr. if they're there?
I would love to have Will Anderson Jr. on the team. I'll just say it. And, the kid from Georgia, I think people are saying if he makes it to us, we should get him. Sure, is he maybe the most talented player in the draft? I think Dan Campbell's trying to build a culture, and I'm not necessarily sold that he's going to fit that culture, regardless of the idea that you take the most talented player available, especially in the first round of the draft. So that's kind of where I stand on that one.
That's fair. And Wally, I'm sorry, but I got to ask one more, and I'm done. I promise.
Go for it.
So, is there a quarterback in this draft that you'd want if the cards fell in place, or are you still not really feeling out any of the quarterbacks in this draft?
Here's where I'll say Hendon Hooker late. Give me the Tennessee kid in a later round. If he slips to us and he's looking good, I'm not sold on Will Levis. I'm not sold on Richardson. Of course I want to say give me CJ, but I try to separate my, I don't want to be a homer. And I'm not really sold on Bryce either as an NFL talent. I know people are really high on him right now, but I don't really see that necessarily translating. And I think the big thing too is he might, whoever we draft might be sent for a year or two, and that's why I think Hooker might be a good snag. Let him get healthy, let him learn the offense, let him develop the pace of the NFL game. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Well, this isn't going to be goodbye for Kyle. He will be back because his Lions have 2 first-round picks, but we're going to go back to studio now because you know who it's time for? The Las Vegas Raiders. So I will be making that pick in a second. Kyle, thanks for coming on. We'll be talking to you here in a little bit.
Thanks, fellas.
We want to thank Kyle Butson once again for picking for the Detroit Lions, which means... I don't know. Who's on the clock at 7, guys? Does anybody know?
Can't imagine.
Nope.
No. Oh, I guess it's the Raiders. So I guess that means that yours truly is going to be selecting for the Las Vegas Raiders. Without further ado, I'll get right into it. With the 7th pick in the 2023 LOD mock draft, the 3-time Super Bowl champions, the Las Vegas Raiders, are selecting Darnell Wright, tackle out of the University of Tennessee. Go Vols and go Raiders.
First question. How realistic is it that the Raiders are picking this guy at 7?
I'm so happy you asked that. It's almost impossible that they're going to take an offensive lineman, Stephen. So thank you for asking. But allow me to explain, because I don't think they're drafting 7 either. This is either going to be a team that's moving up for a quarterback. Highly recommend not doing that. Or I would suggest at least they trade down for one of the corners. I think that there's not enough of a gap between Christian Gonzalez and Devin Witherspoon that it's worth taking one here. I'd rather go down, get a few more picks. But David and I have been trench guys forever. You build from within. You already have a very good left tackle. You bring in arguably the best pass protector in this entire draft class. And all of a sudden, you give that rookie who's going to be there next year a chance because Jimmy G ain't it.
Because it's Brian Hoyer's team. Got it.
It's Brian fucking Hoyer's team.
Oh, God. The Las Vegas Patriots are going to be special next year.
They are. Jacoby Myers is back. He helped us win a game last year. He's here to do it again.
So I know that they're not drafting a tackle, and I know that they're not sticking at 7. That's what I know. If you had your dream scenario line up, who are they trading down to and what for?
All right, so if in reality, just going off of what's likely to happen and trying to make the best of it, I would love for them to trade down, and whether it be Christian Gonzalez, Devin Witherspoon, or even hell, Joey Porter Jr., I'd be happy with them doing that in like the early teens. In a perfect world, it's right tackle they need. So in a perfect world, you at the top of the second, maybe DeJuan Jones falls there. He's a solar eclipse. I think he would be a perfect fit, especially with what the Raiders are trying to do. So that would be the dream scenario, albeit I don't think it's very likely. I'm worried that it is a trade-up, whether it's C.J. Stroud or Anthony Richardson. With that being said, we're going to go from one guy looking a little ridiculous to somebody looking very good. And that is Evan Dessecker with the Atlanta Falcons pick. Evan, number 8, we'll throw it there now. And now we welcome on with the 8th pick for his Atlanta Falcons, the Dirty Birds. If you listen to the podcast, you've heard his name many a times. He was a guest last year. Evan Dessecker, how are you doing, buddy?
Doing great. It's good to see you boys again. Thanks for the nice introduction there. Glad to be on the show, making a pick.
You have to get a good introduction when you look as good as you do right now. If you're listening to this, go to the YouTube. Evan Dessecker is pulling off his best prime he ever could right now.
Big lights, big time, prime time. Best pick in the Falcons history, so we're trying to get it rolling, you know?
Well, yeah, we'll get into the fact that you and I know a lot about failed draft picks in a little bit, but
just a few.
Just a few.
Yeah.
But all right, Evan, we'll throw it over to you. Let's hear your 8th pick.
All right, so with the 8th pick in the loss of down NFL draft, the Atlanta Falcons will be selecting Peter Skoronski.
There it is.
Northwestern.
Skoronski, I love it.
I knew I was going to be screwing it up, but I'm going to tell you everyone in Atlanta is going to know his name in 12 months, and I'm going to be looking like an absolute fool. This guy's going to plug in at left guard to start the season. All we do is run the ball. We currently have probably one of the worst left guards in the league. We run the ball twice, I think second most in the league as far as attempts and yards per game. So plug him in right away. I checked the tape. Wally might have said this guy can only play guard, but I think he can play tackle too. So when Jake Matthews retires, this is who we're going to take, and this is going to be our guy. Wally, help me out here. Pronounce the name again.
Skoronski, I got you. Peter Skoronski.
All right. I swear I practiced it a few times.
I actually love this pick for Atlanta, and I love that you are plugging him in at left guard. And the reason I love that is so he's listed at tackle, but his big criticism is that he's got like sub 33-inch arms.
He's got a T-Rex arms.
Right, he's got T-Rex arms. So as an NFL player, he's probably best suited at guard. And I think a lot of people are going to miss that. And I love that you came prepared and he's the left guard for you guys. Now, can he play tackle? Probably. Tackle's all about footwork. Sure, arm length matters, but really it's all about footwork. But I love that initially it's left guard right off the bat.
Oh, man, he's spot on in the trenches. And pair him with Lindstrom on the right side. Now you're talking about maybe potentially two great guards moving forward.
So you and I were talking when you gave this pick off air beforehand that this is not exactly how we expect the board in real life to play out. So because of that, I want to hear your thoughts. Was offensive line a priority going in, or was there someone else that you might have been looking at?
Well, the Falcons have never had a pass rusher worth note, in my opinion, besides Jonathan Abram, but, possibly in his later years. I mean, in my lifetime, they haven't had anybody pressure the quarterback, and be a disruptor. So somebody to pair with Grady Jarrett on that line would be excellent. Considered corner here, I think the Falcons might look at a corner as well, just because the Akuda is only picked up for the fifth-year option. So I think they'll look at corner. I think they'll look, if we can get a pass rusher, they'll take one there. But, I mean, O-line is something that we've been lacking for a long time, and considering what Arthur Smith does, run the ball, it's what we need, and Desmond Ritter's throwing the ball. So hopefully we'll be doing a lot of handing the ball off instead.
Well, you mentioned how you're running the ball a lot. I know there's a lot of criticism with Ritter, the small sample size that we have. Some of the mock drafts that I've been seeing is maybe a reach on Anthony Richardson, or maybe if there's another quarterback there. Do you believe in all the smoke screen, perhaps, of Ritter as our guy moving forward? Maybe Atlanta could go and get a quarterback and maybe trade up, and they could just be lying to us the whole time and building a great roster behind it.
Good question.
That is a great question. I think, if the right guy falls, I could see him taking a quarterback. I don't think Desmond Ritter's the quarterback of the future, but I think that's why they signed Taylor Heineke, because Taylor Heineke is a dog. You're going to see him play probably this year if we don't draft a quarterback. But, hey, I hope Ritter proves me wrong and Ritter comes out and balls out. But I think that they're sticking with him, and I think that they're thinking Heineke is a pretty good backup. So if Richardson falls, it sounds like he's supposed to sit a year, supposedly, so we hear. I don't think he'll play right away. I would take him, I guess, at 8, but I don't really want a quarterback, I'll tell you that.
Well, the three of us are actually a lot higher on Atlanta than this podcast has been in its entire history. So we're wishing you luck, Evan. We thank you so much for coming on. And I guess we'll be throwing over now to the 9th pick of the draft and be getting on with there. So thanks so much for coming on, buddy.
Anytime. Go Birds.
And now we welcome on a very special guest. If you guys are a listener of this podcast, you've heard his name dozens of times. Chicago Bears fan, Stephen's buddy, Adam Alfonso. How are you doing, buddy?
Oh, I'm fantastic. I'm ready to make the 9th overall pick for my Chicago Bears.
Absolutely. It's bear weather all the time. 365 days a year, it's bear weather.
Bear weather's a state of mind.
It is a state of mind. So without further ado, Fonz, take her away.
With the 9th overall pick in the 2023 Lacedown draft, my Chicago Bears select Devin Witherspoon, cornerback, University of Illinois.
There you go. You went with a hometown kid to much bolster the defense. Is that what the thought was here?
Well, to tell you the truth, if the board plays out the way it did thus far, Poles has to be picking up every and any call, trying to trade back a little bit. Obviously, this draft is all about the trenches, getting protection for Justin Fields, getting after the passer, 2 things we did pretty poorly last year. But the way the draft fell, I don't think he was content taking potentially his third offensive lineman or 3rd or 4th defensive lineman. If you had the chance to take the first cornerback in the draft, a premium position, which Poles has said that he values, I think you jump on it. And with the play that Braxton Jones gave us last year in his rookie year, making a jump from Southern Utah to left tackle in the NFL, playing every single snap, I think that there's room to grow there. And as you look at right tackle, which is a glaring need, I'm not sure that's the same premium that you'd put on left tackle or cornerback. So at the end of the day, best player available. We're certainly not one player away, so you might as well keep building this thing as we go.
Well, you had the most money going into free agency this year. You trade back and get even more assets. Ryan Poles, it feels like he's living his best life. He's fired up about this right now. And you brought up a really good point. This isn't going to be the way this draft plays out. The Bears are not married to the 9th pick.
Right.
And we could see them move. But I had to ask, what was it about Witherspoon for you that separated him from the other top corners?
I think if you look at Witherspoon, it's probably going to come down between Witherspoon and Gonzalez, right? Gonzalez, the sticky man, coverage guy, maybe big traits. I heard him likened to Jeff Okuda, so it's giving you a little bit of the chills. But what drew me to Witherspoon is he's not only a Lovie Smith guy, which Eberflus is a disciple of the Lovie Smith, Rod Marinelli system. He's also described as a junkyard dog. And I just think we need more junkyard dogs. You watch his tape, it's all of him standing over. I'll take the flags if it comes with the big hits. I can see Christian Watson losing his helmet on a crosser in the highlights next year.
So I know this isn't how this goes. We're doing first round only, but you mentioned there's a lot of needs for the Bears still.
Mm-hmm.
If they do go cornerback in the first round, what do you expect them to do early in day 2?
Trench warfare. Just go after the trenches. And honestly, having 3 picks within 12 slots of the back of the second and early third round, I could see them packaging that and jumping back up either late first or early second to get their guy if they think that's going to plug and play on the right tackle to solidify that line in front of Justin. So, I don't know. There's options. We have 10 picks right now, I believe. I don't think we end with 10 picks.
I like that. That's always, you can tell when someone's a draftee or a guy that knows about the draft, because that is textbook for a team like Ryan Poles' Chicago Bears. Now, last thing for you, last question. We obviously know about Stephan. We know about his Packers. They've kind of dominated the NFC North. Who's your NFC North champ at this point next year? And can I get a win total for the Chicago Bears?
Okay, win total for the Chicago Bears. I think the over-under is probably at like 7.5. I'm going over. Give me
that a boy.
8. Give me a cool 8 or 9, and that's probably a good season from Justin. And we just probably can't stop the run because I don't think we can do it all on the line. So I think if we take Witherspoon in the back, the linebackers, that I think Ryan Poles ingratiated himself to the Bears fans by having the most money and spending it all on linebacker. But tradition's tradition. The cat knows a tradition. So if you ask me to pick, I would have said the Lions, except for they're acting so shitty on Twitter. Lions fans are brand new. They didn't even make the playoffs, and they're talking so much shit on Twitter. So I will say that the Vikings maybe pull it out, just because I would have given the edge to the Lions fans, but maybe Jared Goff turns into a pumpkin. Sorry, Butson.
Adam Alfonso, everybody. Chicago Bears, keep an eye on them. They're going to be one of the busiest teams this week. Thanks again, buddy, for coming on.
Cheers, Wally. Cheers, boys. Thanks.
And now, for the 10th pick, we welcome on a recurring guest. You guys, if you are listeners, you know this man, Zack Youssef, Philadelphia Eagles Hardo. Zack, how are you doing, man?
Pretty good. Still living off the high of last Eagles season. I'm not quite ready to go into the next, but I think once draft comes, we just gotta go full send. But yeah, pretty good. No complaints.
This is an NFC champion Eagles podcast, so this is just, you're at home. Welcome
until
home,
they
Zack.
get rid of the trenches, and then it's going to be shit on the Eagles forever.
No.
Not with Howie. Not with Howie. But playing Howie today is Zack Youssef. So we're going to throw it over right now. Zack, can you throw us into the 10th pick?
Absolutely. And with the 10th pick, the Eagles are going to select Paris Johnson out of OSU. He is a right tackle, I believe. He played the last year's right tackle. And really, I think it makes too much sense to me for the Eagles to make this pick, because you think about it, Lane Johnson played pretty much healthy all last year, but when he got hurt, there was a hiccup in the offense, and it's because he was out. And the guy hasn't given up a sack in the past 2 years, I believe. So he's a hell of a player, but also he said he's also not going to play beyond maybe 2 or 3 years. So you do have to start thinking about that replacement. And also, they really don't have anyone to back him up right now. So I think that would be it makes too much sense to have that pick now. And he could also potentially play guard in the meantime, while he doesn't play now at tackle for Lane. But I think the Eagles, with 2 first-round picks, they have a lot of flexibility up and down. They could trade up if someone falls. They could trade down if Paris Johnson is not there. So I think they have a lot of options here.
So I love the pick a lot, really do. Replacement for Lane Johnson. Didn't he just sign a 1-year deal, like a massive deal, and you're kind of up in the air? Well, you're not really up in the air. They'll probably re-sign him, but he's let's call it up in the air next season. My question here is why tackle instead of D-line? And I know you kind of explained it there, but my thoughts are, what made you lean towards the offensive trenches where you're still the best in the league, instead of bolstering the defensive line where you've lost a couple players in the offseason?
It's a super valid question because you could make that exact same argument. And I think that is the other direction they could go. I think defensive tackle or defensive end is arguably the most defensive tackle is the most pressing need on the team because they did lose Javon Hargrave. They have not replaced that. Right now at defensive tackle, they have Cox, who's a year older, wasn't as good last year. I mean, he's still good, but he can't play.
He plugs holes. He's not rushing the quarterback like Hargrave was.
Right. They haven't replaced that production. And right now they have Milton Williams, who's a good rotational guy, not going to start. Jordan Davis, who hopefully lives up to his draft pedigree, but he's still an unknown. So you can't count on him. So they don't have bodies at defensive tackle. So to your question, yeah, I agree. They probably could go defensive tackle.
I almost want to piggyback off David and ask almost a different question. I've seen a lot of hype around maybe sneaking up and staying there and snagging Bijan Robinson out of Texas. Loaded running back room, I know, and you've already made really great reasons of why you'd want to get Paris Johnson. I want to couple that with why not possibly add a Bijan, someone who's going to break out, immediately come to the offense and do something, or maybe a lot of talk about Joey Porter Jr. or Devin Witherspoon to bolster up that secondary that kind of lost a piece or two in this offseason. Now you can get someone who can plug and play right away, cheap on both ends of the ball. But yeah, either way you take it. Why not one of those guys just because fuck it, you have the 10th pick and really shove it to New Orleans?
It's true. It is true. Bijan is tempting because, I mean, you don't get that kind of like pedigree of running back every day. You don't get the chance to draft that. And especially behind our offensive line, that is super tempting because I don't watch much college football, but I think Bijan is pretty good as a receiver out the backfield. So that's also pretty tempting as well. But ultimately that would be the most, I think, just luxury of luxury picks in the first round, just with all of the defensive needs and the offensive line. And frankly, I think they got pretty good production out of Kenneth Gainwell, especially towards the end of the year. He started really coming on in the playoffs. We'll see how many games they get out of Rashad Penny this year. But I feel like Howie usually goes cheap at that position. They didn't even pay Miles. At corner, I think also that's also another viable position, but it would be similar to tackle because now there's not as much of a need now because they still have Slay and Bradbury, and hopefully they don't fall off a cliff. But I think
mine is, I'm not going to have much of a question just because you are a diehard Eagles fan. You know who Howie Roseman is, and everybody that is saying Bijan, it might feel right for other GMs. It's just not Howie Roseman's MO. It's offensive line, defensive line at 10. And I'm actually really excited to see what you do at pick 30. We'll be coming back to Zack here in a little bit. But first, we're going to go to the 11th pick and hear if Tennessee might also be taking someone on the offensive line. All right. We just got done with Zack Youssef at number 10, which means we go to one of my favorite people on earth, my Uncle Scott Faulkner. This is going to be weird for us because guess what? For the next 5-7 minutes, you're not Uncle Scott to me. You're just Scott. So, Scott, how are you doing?
I'm all right. How are you? Are you still just
doing
Wally?
Really well. I can be just Wally. I can be whatever you want me to be. But this is the best time of year. We have you and your Titans. You get to be kind of like me now. I feel bad. You're joining the Raiders back where I guess we all kind of are used to being, the gutter.
Yes.
And you're about to be, I'd imagine, going into a rebuild. So I'm very excited to hear what you're about to do with the 11th pick. So without further ado, Scott, let's hear it.
Well, with the 11th pick of the draft, the Tennessee Titans will take Broderick Jones, tackle.
There it is. You and I have been texting for a few days.
Yes,
because we had very similar, I think, big boards for our team. And I was stuck between Darnell Wright and Broderick Jones. And as the people at home will be able to see from this video, my Uncle Scott there is a die-hard Tennessee Volunteer fan. So I did feel bad taking Darnell Wright from you. But I have to ask, first of all, what was it about Broderick Jones that stood out?
You know, we just needed a solid tackle. We're definitely need to rebuild the line. As much as it breaks my heart to say, we got to rebuild the line. Needed a solid tackle. It was between him and actually Paris Johnson was my on my board at the top of him, and he just went off the board right in front of me. So we went ahead and went with Broderick. I think he's going to be a good fit for us, and I think he'll hit the ground running and start off really quick for us in the season.
And we just unfortunately saw Taylor Lewan, a longtime tackle for your Tennessee Titans. He's gone, so it makes a ton of sense to bring in Broderick Jones. But one thing that we've been kind of hearing about is that the Titans are possibly dipping their toe in this quarterback market. So there were two thoughts I had. One, Will Levis was still on the board, but not only him, Hendon Hooker, your Tennessee Volunteer. What were your thoughts on those two?
I'm hoping he slides to the second round for us.
I knew you wouldn't like Levis, by the way,
no,
because of the Kentucky
absolutely
factor.
not. He does not exist. That's
not
the
there.
state
Not
that we
there.
don't name. You know, Hendon Hooker is he's a great quarterback. I think he'd be a good fit for us coming into this draft. And I've told you over the week, I've said, growing up, it was always quarterbacks and running backs in the first round. You know, that's who went. You didn't see a lineman. You didn't see wide receivers. You know, it was the money men. And now it's the O-line ruling the draft right now. And you know, the wide receivers are coming in strong. Running backs just don't get taken. Quarterbacks, we have a lot of needs, a lot of holes to fill. And as much as I would like to say take a quarterback right now, I think we deal with what we've got and hope that Hooker falls to the second round.
Well, do you have anything else for us that you want to share today? I know that you've been kind of itching. You said you were going to be like the super talker. I know who you are. I know that's what you and I like to do is talk. So what do you have for me for the Titans? What's next year looking like?
Not good. So here's what I think is going to happen in the offseason. I think that Henry's going to get traded. I still think he's going to go. I hope he does, and it would be good for him if he did. I'd like to see him have a chance to compete for a championship. It's not going to be in Tennessee the next couple of years. If any Titans fans listening to this, I'm sorry. I'll speak the truth to you. Not going to happen the next couple of years. I don't think Tannehill will be around by the end of the season. I think that the Titans will take a quarterback somewhere in this draft. I don't think Willis is the answer for us. I was hoping they would keep Dobbs. I mean, I thought Dobbs did great the last two games of the season. 400-something yards passing in one game, couple touchdown passes. I think he did great. Just couldn't pull the win out.
Well, I tell you what, I'm hoping for your sake too, because I know you like Hendon Hooker. I hope he's there in the second round, because that would feel like a perfect fit, especially getting to stay at home with all those crazy Volunteer fans too.
So look for Henry to move down, or look for Henry to get traded.
Okay.
They'll pick up a first-round pick and an early second-round pick. They're going to pick up a tackle in the first round. They'll pick up Hooker in the second round early if he's still there.
I love it. I love it. I know the people at home well. Uncle Scott Faulkner, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
And of course, it wouldn't be right to have a Tennessee pick without the biggest Tennessee Titan fan in the world out there. Make sure you're back next year, because you will be our Titans picker. And let's be honest, it's probably going to be a pretty early pick. So you're going to have a lot of fun with that one.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I can't wait.
Well, perfect. That means we will send it over now to the number 12 pick.
Thanks for having me.
You're the best. And we want to thank Scott Faulkner and the Tennessee Titans, who just took another offensive lineman in Broderick Jones, which leads us back into David, who is once again selecting for the Houston Texans. Ironically, David, this is the Cleveland Browns' former pick for that Deshaun Watson deal, so it seems perfectly fitting that it is you selecting here.
Oh, how
so
the
with that being said,
turntables.
how the turntables is absolutely correct. So, David, pick number 12. What are you doing?
I had a real tough time with this one. I'm not going to lie to you, but with the 12th pick in the draft, the Houston Texans are going to select Anthony Richardson. And
Ooh, there it is.
I'm not even in love with the pick, but if Anthony Richardson were to truly fall to 12, I don't think Houston would pass. And I don't necessarily know if he'd be a great fit, but he'd be a fun project there. If you're committed to playing Davis Mills in the first season. I don't think he's going to be there, which is why I think realistically at 12, you're probably looking at either an offensive skill position like maybe Smith and Jigba, or even another defensive piece like Christian Gonzalez. If one of the top 4 QBs is off the board and should be off the board by then. It's just hard when we were doing this. Nobody selected, and I'm like, there's just no way they're going to pass on it if he's there.
That was going to be my first question, which you answered is, who would they pick? Because if someone comes up and trades up to snag Anthony Richardson, this completely changes it. But I'm going to ask a different question here. If they do end up taking Anthony Richardson, what is this looking like? Is he going to be set up to potentially have a Josh Rosen season where he could be that guy for a 9-month span, but then they ended up being so bad that now they're in prime position for a Drake May, for a Caleb Williams here next year? And then do they abandon ship again on here and go for that guy? So what is he set up to be like if he does end up getting drafted there?
I couldn't tell you, but again, I think in my opinion, you'd have to commit to Davis Mills as your starter, and until you're confident Richardson can go play in a game and, not have the accuracy question marks that I have about him going into the NFL. He's got all the athleticism in the world, but maybe he could be Lamar Jackson 2.0. But even, we talk about Lamar every week for the last month. He's not the guy that you really, really want to build around. He's just very good, and, he can't throw the football. So is that what we're getting with Richardson? Who knows? But if he's as good as Lamar Jackson is and has been in the NFL, that's a pretty big boost for the Texans. I think you have to commit to, in your mind at least, until you get to the season, you got to be committing to Davis Mills if you draft him.
So I got to give you credit, first of all, because this was a bull team to draft for. It's kind of the inverse of what the Bengals are, because there's some teams towards the end of the first, you get that we could do anything. It's best player available. Where the Texans, on the other hand, you look at their depth chart and you're like, oh my God, there's like 8 holes. What do we do here? And I get your point. There's no wide receiver, so you want to take one. But my question instead is, in the event Anthony Richardson is off the board, would you have gone with the guy we can't stop talking about, Will Levis at 12? Or do you think that that's where, if you're the Texans, maybe you go with the wide receiver?
I don't know. Because here's the thing. In real life, I think if Will Levis is there at 12, they're taking him if they didn't take a quarterback with 2. Yeah. So, in real life, yeah, they're probably taking Will Levis at 12. But I'm not a Will Levis supporter. I don't think he's going to be a good quarterback in the NFL. Again, I could be very, very wrong. I'm wrong a lot when it comes to the NFL, but I think in real life, it would be better for the Texans to continue drafting defense or put a piece on offense. Best player available. Don't reach, and hope you're bad enough next year to grab like the legitimate 1 or 2 overall quarterback in the draft.
Yeah, and this will be my last thing on this, and then I'll go ahead and take our 13th pick. It's crazy to look. They actually have a halfway decent offensive line. Mm-hmm. It's just, and they have Dalton Schultz, solid tight end right away, just no receivers. But then you get into the quarterback room, and I forgot somewhere that Case Keenum is in Houston. So you have 2 serviceable guys that makes it easy to say, you know what? We'll hold off 1 year. We'll deal with this in 2024. Let's build around this team and help D'Amico Ryans actually have a shot, unlike the last 2 head coaches they've had.
Right.
With that said, that means we are going into the 13th pick of the draft, which means we're operating under the assumption that Aaron Rodgers will eventually be a New York Jet, which means that the quarterbacks are not an option for me. So I'll just be quick and simple with this. With the 13th pick in the 2023 NFL Wally LOD mock draft, whatever you want to call it, the New York Jets are taking Nolan Smith, the combine hero out of Georgia, a guy that scored ridiculous numbers. I think he ran a 4.39 40. His broad jump was ridiculous. A guy that if the draft happened in March, he'd probably be a top 10 pick. But now it feels possibly a little reachy at 13, but I had to do it.
I don't hate the pick at all. I think it's a great pick. My only question is Smith and Jigba is still on the board. You've got Aaron Rodgers, who bitches about weapons constantly and then tells everyone he only wants the worst receivers he's ever played with to come with him everywhere. I guess my question is, why not in a potentially elite X threat, elite route runner out of Ohio State?
Well, first of all, this is, again, we keep doing this preamble beforehand, but I don't think that their goal here is defense. I don't think their goal would be receiver. I think their goal is offensive tackle. We just saw a crazy run lead up to this point. If you put a gun to my head and said, who's the Jets pick in real life, I think Broderick Jones is the guy they're really eyeballing here. But if you ask about the receiver room, it's crazy to think, but it's kind of loaded already, where you have a lot of big names. You have Garrett Wilson. They brought in Allen Lazard for him. Mecole Hardman's there is a good slot. You still have Denzel Mims, who you kind of hope will eventually turn into something, and Corey Davis. So I think for me, it would have been more of we'll take a receiver late day 2, early day 3, and we'll go from there. Try to build in the trenches on both sides of the ball in the meantime for a team that really doesn't have that many needs.
Well, my follow-up to that is, do you think that they'll have to give up one of those receivers like Corey Davis to the Packers if we're getting Aaron Rodgers in return? I mean, they're going to give up picks for Rodgers, but do you think they have to throw in a player like Corey Davis in there? And then the other question is you watched what Garrett Wilson and Smith and Jigba did together. That seems really enticing as a wide receiver core with Aaron Rodgers, even though I deeply despise Aaron Rodgers with a passion and root for his downfall.
Do you?
Yeah.
I didn't know you didn't like Aaron.
Yeah, it's
that's
not obvious at all.
Well, here's the thing for me. I think that if it is Corey Davis that you have to give up with a pick, I think Jet fans are secretly high-fiving. I think the worry is, what if we have to give up Mecole Hardman or, God forbid, Garrett Wilson instead of a pick? That's when you worry about drafting a receiver. But for me, I think that the room's still good enough, especially you're getting Breece Hall back. You're going to get Mekhi Becton back. The line in the offense looks pretty good. So I think that, for me, it's a luxury pick if you go wide receiver. And I think they'll wait off on that.
Well, I love that you said that you're going to get Mekhi Becton back. Elijah Vera Tucker also is coming off an injury. With this pick, did offensive line ever come across your mind if a Skoronski, Wright, or Jones ends up kind of falling here a little bit? Or maybe reaching on an Osiris here at that position just because of the injury history of that offensive line. To your point, I think you guys did enough on the skill side, on the skill set side of the ball. But what about the trenches?
So that's interesting to bring up Osiris. I think the reason that wouldn't be an option is because they did sign Laken Tomlinson this year from San Francisco, and I think they're kind of really willing to run with him. And before you came back, you were on a run, or we had what I believe is that the offensive tackle is the goal for this team. It's just they're in a weird spot. If a run like this draft happens, I don't think they want to take Anton Johnson here or DeJuan Jones. I think, if anything, you'd trade down or try to trade back into the first for that. It's just, to me, a really weird spot if the draft falls this way for the Jets. With that being said, we are going to now throw it over to pick number 14, where we have Ryan Hill, Mr. King of the Hill, drafting for everyone's hated team, the New England Patriots. Ryan, take it away. And now, we welcome on my good friend, a New England Patriots fan. Don't hold that against him. You might know him as King of the Hill, classmate of mine at Ohio Media School, Ryan Hill. How are you doing, buddy?
Oh, it's a pleasure. I'm finally get to be a part of this Loss of Down podcast. I've been a big fan since day one of you guys taking this off, so finally making a guest appearance on the show. It's been long overdue, but dealing with some sinus congestion, but I'm good.
That's perfect. I was going to say, everybody at home that's listening will know I'm sick too, so this is just a disgusting talking stretch between you and I. They'll feel right at home.
We got a Patriots fan and a Raiders fan talking. It's already disgusting.
That's true too. Shout out Jacoby Myers, Raider legend already. Thank you so much for what he did for us.
You're welcome.
Well, Ryan, you have the number 14th pick in the draft. There's a lot that you can do here, but let's get into it. I'll throw it over to you. Take her away.
With the 14th pick in the Loss of Down NFL draft, the New England Patriots select Jackson Smith-Njigba, wide receiver of the Ohio State University.
You can tell this guy is a Buckeye at heart too, because he threw the in there.
You got to.
You got to.
Put the emphasis on the Ohio State University.
And here's the best part, is this is one of those rare times, as you and I get to very rarely celebrate Buckeyes on our teams.
Right.
This one makes a ton of sense for the Patriots. Last year, we got to see a lot of dysfunction on the offense. Bill O'Brien's going to be the play caller, you'd imagine, at least the OC this year. Why did you go Jackson Smith-Njigba? Why was he the pick here for you?
If I'm correct, we ranked 26th last year in the passing stats. It was brutal. We ran a lot of screen plays and everything. I know we've lost Jacoby Myers, like we just joked about, to the Raiders there. We brought in Juju Smith, but I still think Mac Jones. I'm a Mac fan, hence the reason I got my Mac Jones jersey on today. I'm one of the few that still believe in Mac Jones. So I think this is a prove-it year for him. And with Bill O'Brien being in from Alabama, he worked under Bill O'Brien at Alabama, and he had a great year, fantastic collegiate career there. And I think bringing in a piece like Jackson Smith-Njigba right there it's going to be a make or break thing for Mac Jones. This is a piece right here that can definitely put this offense much better than what it was last year. So I think you bring someone in, and Njigba, we didn't see it much at Ohio State, him playing the outside, but I think he can get to the outside from time to time and play there, because he did say, I'm not just a slot guy. You can plug me anywhere, and I will be able to excel. So I'm looking forward to seeing what more he can do. It sucks being a Buckeye fan, him being hindered to only like a game last year, not even. So I'm hoping to see him in a Patriots jersey out there on the field, making plays, being a safety blanket for Mac Jones, and hopefully those two can have a connection that can run on for like the next 10, 15 years.
You're no stranger to the Patriots' struggles at drafting wide receivers.
Oh, yeah.
So a guy like Jackson Smith-Njigba sliding right in. First of all, you're completely right. This narrative that he's only a slot receiver because he runs a 4.5, he's got one of the quickest 3-cone drills we've ever seen.
Right.
He's an unreal route runner.
Oh, he's so smooth off the break and everything. Like, he's everything that a quarterback wants. I mean, you saw how much he excelled at Ohio State in his 1 year. He had over 1,600 yards. The man balled out. Let's not forget about the Rose Bowl performance. Like, you could talk about the competition he went up against and everything, but the guy balled out on one of the biggest stages of them all, and people forget about that due to the injuries. So I think if he can slide to 14, that's a steal for the Patriots. They have to go out there and get a man that can help Mac Jones and this offense figure it out, because I think Ramondre Stevenson can hold it down at the running back position. Bringing in pieces like Juju help, and then having Devontae Parker back, Mike Gesicki, I think this could be one of those final pieces to help build this offense. And then from there on, I think we can see great things in New England.
You have now Hunter Henry, like you said, Gesicki there, two very good tight ends. You talked very highly of Ramondre Stevenson. That's a big get for running backs. Now with Juju and Jackson Smith and Jigba, you might finally get to see if Mac Jones can be the guy. And that's the best thing in the world, because even if he isn't, that means next fall, or next spring, I should say, you can be right back here possibly picking Drake May or Caleb Williams for the New England Patriots.
Absolutely, and then whoever that guy is, if Mac isn't that guy, can step in and take the reign and move on from there. So I truly hope it is Mac. I think Mac gets a lot of hate that he doesn't deserve right now. New OC, everything else, it's just all fallen into place that this could be a breakout year for him. People forget about his rookie season when he had Josh McDaniels. Now he's got another OC that he has experience with, and then you bring in Jackson Smith and Jigba and all those other pieces. I think it's setting up. The division's tough. I'm not saying that this one piece can definitely propel us back to the division winner, but I think it's on the right track to getting there. So I think this is a no-brainer pick.
Ryan Hill, everybody, thank you so much for coming on. King of the Hill, check him out everywhere. This guy is going to be big himself. So thank you again, Ryan. And that means it's Stephen Weed's time. We'll throw it over there for pick number 15. Thank you again, Ryan. You know, you get your homer pick with Jackson Smith and Jigba there, and it leads us into Stephen Weed's Green Bay Packers, where I'm sure that was a name you were probably looking at too. I'm interested now. It's pick 15. Are you sticking at wide receiver? Are you going somewhere else?
So this is in my dynasty, or in my fantasy, kind of similar to your, Wally, but for the Green Bay Packers 15th pick in the 2023 LOD mock draft, I have them picking wide receiver Zay Flowers out of Boston College. We'll see. It's more of a pipe dream. I'm realistically expecting them to pick a tight end, maybe looking into a safety and snagging a couple pieces here, maybe something on the defensive line. That's just what they have done in the past. One first-round wide receiver in the past 20 years. I want to say that was Javon Walker in 2004, maybe a little bit earlier. But I think that this is a good piece. You're building a young staff, a young room around a quarterback that really needs to prove himself in Jordan Love. I liked what Christian Watson did last year, some flashes of Romeo Doubs. They got their running back tandem. They have a solid O-line. And you know what? This is a win-win. If it doesn't work for Jordan Love, maybe the next quarterback we bring in, they're going to have a young group of receivers that he can already build around.
So I have this shit-eating grin on purpose
Great.
because... No, well, wouldn't it feel just
exactly
unintentionally intentional that they would take a first-round wide receiver almost in spite? Like, you know what, dude? Have fun in New York. Go to hell. We got our boy now in Jordan Love. Because a room with Zay Flowers, who you talk about quickness and athleticism. The guy was a freak. He's a small guy. Yeah, he plays slot, but he can play outside too. And you pair him up with Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson, who came on late. I think that could be so fun if Jordan Love pans out to even be a serviceable quarterback in the NFL. So I actually fully applaud the pick. I don't think I have too many questions for you.
I just think from a Packers standpoint with Matt LaFleur in that offense, we really haven't been able to see it flourish to what it actually can be, because when you have a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, that's a unique quarterback to have in your system. Something he's never had to deal with. I think up until that point, his best quarterback was Ryan Tannehill, right? So now you're going to allow a mobile quarterback with two running backs, the speedster of a Zay Jones. I'm just thinking end arounds, flies. It's going to be a game of Madden for Green Bay all of next year.
I mean, dude, I'm looking at your depth chart right now, and I know why you said tight end, but this is a great draft to get one the second or third round.
Which is what they're very good at.
This is an offense that if Jordan Love can, even just live up a little to the expectations, this is an exciting offense. I don't know why. The offensive line is loaded. Yep. All of a sudden, the receiving room looks really good. And you mentioned that two-headed running back monster that almost any team in the league would kill for. I think I like that draft.
You never know. Maybe Green Bay ends up swapping first-round picks in the Aaron Rodgers trade, and they get 13, and this is Jackson Smith and Jigba that they're talking about, which is going to be a steal. Then Jordan Love really has to baptism by fire right off the bat.
Damn. I like it. Well, with that being said, Stevens Packers have taken a wide receiver.
Allegedly.
And that's going to throw us into allegedly. Yeah, that's a good point, because I feel like when we do this and we talk to each other next
You're like,
Friday,
you're an idiot.
we're going to be like, yeah, we're like, oh, cool. They did anything but wide receiver because it's the Green Bay Packers and they don't take wide receivers in the first round.
They're going to end up picking up Nolan Smith from Georgia.
Well, hey, you know what? Combine hero. If they don't go Jets, maybe you get them there. But pick 16's coming up now. We welcome on another Walsh buddy of ours for picking the Washington Commanders. We'll throw it over to Zack Leonatti now. And now picking for the Washington Commanders at pick number 16, we welcome on our friend Zack Leonatti. Zack, first of all, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Wally. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. How are you doing today?
Well, no, first of all, it's an honor and a privilege for us to have you. You've been one of our biggest supporters since day one. I can't tell you enough how much we appreciate you. So thank you very much. Part two, you're one of our few people on today. Because the Browns are not picking in the first round, you are adopting the team that you were born in, or right around the DMV area. Mm-hmm. So, first of all, Dan Snyder's out. It's a great day. Let's go to you now. Pick 16. Let's hear who you got.
All right, man. Pick 16, LOD, draft, Washington Commanders. Take running back, Bijan Robinson from the University of Texas. Hook 'em.
Hook 'em is right. So you are the one. We've been waiting now for 15 picks, wondering who was going to be the one to go after now the biggest running back prospect since Saquon Barkley. Now, the Washington Commanders have Brian Robinson. Everybody remembers his story, getting shot through the leg last year. What made you think what made you think that Bijan Robinson was the move here?
So I think for a couple of reasons. The first one being, it seems like all these great successful teams now are starting to have this two-headed monster at running back. The Packers have their two, the Browns obviously have their two studs, and it just seems that you have this rushing attack where you have some guys that can really beat you down, and all of a sudden the third quarter you can bring a running back on with some fresh legs. You have another elite guy there. It really, I think, puts all these offenses at an advantage. And especially a team that has a Sam Howell, a second-year guy who really has no experience under his belt, or the more likely option, I would think, Jacoby Brissett. And we saw what he was able to saw firsthand in Cleveland, as a fill-in guy. You put the right weapons around him, get the right game plan in place. He can be a game manager. So I think if you can load up the weapons around him with a guy like Bijan Robinson, I think you can. We're not going for the Super Bowl necessarily this year, but win a few games in a very competitive division.
I was just gonna say, this might not be a pick that most people are jotting down here, but I guarantee you Commanders fans would be some kind of fired up if at pick 16 they're taking the kid from Texas and Bijan Robinson. Zack, thank you so much for coming on. Everybody out there, Washington fans, HHTR or HTTR, however you guys say it.
HTTC now, whatever. That's
exactly. So, Zack, you're the man. Keep on doing your thing, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you more in the future here.
All right. Thanks, Wally. Appreciate you, man.
And now, with the 17th pick, we're going to welcome on a special guest. We are going back in time here. Friends of mine will remember Pigskins and Nylon, and that means, of course, you remember Casey Mock. So Casey's a diehard Stiller fan. So Casey, first of all, welcome to the show. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. I appreciate you guys having me on. I'm a avid listener to the podcast, so it's fun to be on for the first time.
You've been one of our biggest supporters since the beginning, so it was just natural to have you on. You were one of the first people to reach out to me to get on, so it made me feel even extra bubbly inside. But without any more preamble, we'll throw it over to you. What are your Steelers doing with the 17th pick?
Yeah, Wally, when you sent me the draft board before, I had to kind of double check it because I thought my guy was on there and I just didn't read it. But So there are a couple team needs here: offensive line, linebacker, corner. But I decided to go with the 17th pick in the 2023 NFL Draft. The 6-time Super Bowl champion Pittsburgh Steelers select Christian Gonzalez, quarterback, Oregon.
See, all right, now I'll ask the first question just easy enough. You said you had a couple positions in mind. What was it about this corner class that made you want to go there opposed to offensive line at 17?
Yeah, so I've the top two grades for me, the top two corners were Witherspoon and Gonzalez. And having Gonzalez there at 17, I don't think it's going to actually happen in the draft and in real life. But if it is, that would be an absolute steal. The offensive line-wise, Paris Johnson Jr. is gone. Peter Skoransky's gone. Darnell Wright is gone. So I don't really have any other linemen that have a first-round grade. And then, linebacker, I don't have a first-round grade on any of the linebackers either. So got lucky that Gonzalez fell to me here at 17.
Now, how do you think he's going to mesh? You have obviously a great pick there, Casey. You lose Cameron Sutton here to the offseason to the Lions, but you also gain Pat Peterson. Are you expecting him to be that cornerback, potentially number one here down the road, but number two immediately off here, just maybe be in the background behind Pat Peterson for the time being?
Yeah, it would be nice if he could step in and be, cornerback two and kind of learn from, in my opinion, a legend, a little bit older of a guy, but Patrick Peterson, in his prime was one of the best in the league. So I think it would be a great addition if he could get cornerback two. He's got outstanding size. He's 6'1", 197, freakish athlete. Ran a 4.38, 41.5-inch vertical. So I think he's athletic enough to play at corner right now in the league.
I've got one more question. We'll let you go, Casey. A lot of people out here in Pittsburgh want the legacy play, that of Joey Porter Jr. Why did you kind of steer clear of that and instead go with the Oregon guy here?
Yeah, because in my opinion, every time, I'm a Big Ten football guy, so every time I watched Joey Porter Jr. in a big game, it just seemed like he didn't have it. Wally, obviously, last year Marv went against him and just carved him up. So I'm not as high on Joey Porter Jr. as a lot of people are. He's got outstanding size, but, I think Christian Gonzalez does as well, and just maybe a little bit better ball skills and a better athlete.
Well, Casey, you're the man as always. This guy's going to be a big shot in his own right, Coach, and I don't care what you're doing right now. You're going to be. So we thank you so much for coming on, and good luck to your Steelers coming up next week.
Awesome. Thank you guys for having me again.
And now back once again for his Detroit Lions with the 18th pick now, Kyle Butson. I'm interested again. Last time you went defense, it seems like defense all the way for you. Is it going to be the same at the 18th pick? What are you going with here?
We're sticking with defense with the 18th pick in the 2023 NFL Draft. The Detroit Lions select Joey Porter Jr., defensive back, Penn State.
So now we're starting to get a little bit of a corner run here. We just saw Gonzalez go. Now all of a sudden Joey Porter goes, and I know you're hurting our buddy Hayden Ramsey to pick after you. He really wanted a corner there as well, and he was going Joey P. So you got the legacy player here. What was it about, whether it be cornerback or what part of the defense, why was it corner here at 18 opposed to some other part of the defense?
So, we parted ways with the Jeffrey Okudah project. I think it benefited both sides. He was going to kind of be a salary dead cap for us with his option. And then actually before I was had this pick lined up, obviously we've had some breaking news with the gambling departure of C.J. Moore, who was signed in the offseason. Good news for him, we gave him the $1.4 million signing bonus on the 2-year contract, which he's going to get to keep from my understanding. But he's no longer with the team. So, we lose 2 cornerbacks, within a pretty short time span. I love the kid. He's big. He's physical. Obviously he's a legacy guy. He's been around, the NFL culture for a long time. Now I will say we did sign C.J. Gardner-Johnson. We did sign Cam Sutton. Now both of those guys can also play safety. So I think it's in our best interest to get a big, strong, physical guy that can jam guys up at the edge.
Well, I first of all love the pick. He feels like, again, talk about very safe. And for corners, those don't really exist that much. It's typically boom or bust. We just were talking Jeffrey Okudah. But now you have a defensive back end that looks a lot more promising going into next year, coming off of what you did see. 2 thumbs up from me. I love the pick. David, do you have any other follow-ups for him here for the Joey Porter Jr. pick?
No, I love the pick too. 6'2", 200-pound corner, attacks receivers at the line of scrimmage like his father used to attack left tackle in Cleveland. I think it's a great pick.
I lied. I do have one follow-up because you brought up what happened this last week with the Lions, and we can get into that whole disgusting, you can bet on, it's fine. The NFL's a joke. We know it. But because of that, I know that we had our picks in a little beforehand. Would it have changed anything for you knowing going into this year you're now without a couple wide receiver weapons? Or was it just, hey, we survived last year. We're more than capable to do that with Ben Johnson as our offensive coordinator?
All my faith is in Ben Johnson. Now, the JMO thing hurts, right?
Yeah.
You know, we were really excited about that. And obviously, CJ and the other guys, they were betting on the NFL. That's boneheaded. JMO betting on non-NFL inside the Lions facility. Come on, 6 games. Get out of here. You can't, and like you said, we'll talk about it. But how are they going to be sponsored by 9 different sports books, putting sports books in the facilities, and the guys can't bet on a college game? You know,
yeah, and it's not an NFL game. That's what pisses everybody off. Like, what are we doing here? It's not the Calvin Ridley thing.
Yeah.
I still want to know how they're tracking all of this for all the players.
They claim they can get all of it. They say, you know, the locations of where the bets are placed are pinged, but that's just insane to me. But with that being said, we signed Marvin Jones Jr. I think that's going to save us, you know, having him back there, you know, his veteran presence, you know, he's going to be able to take some of the load that we lost with, you know, losing DJ Chark.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm not super stressed. I wouldn't mind reaching for a wide receiver in a later round, though.
Kyle Butson, everybody, we thank you so much for coming on. You've been a recurring guest now. We know we'll have you back on. We'll have to talk more Lions, maybe coming up here in the next month or so. So keep an eye out for that. But Kyle, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, fellas. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely. Now we're going to go throw it over to Hayden Ramsey with that 19th pick. Perhaps a 3rd cornerback in a row? We'll see. And now picking number 19 for his Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Many of you will remember him from Pigskins and Nylon. The other part of the trio you just got to meet, Casey, Hayden Ramsey. First of all, how you doing, buddy?
Doing well. I'm excited to be here.
That's what I like to hear. Without further ado, let's hear it, Hayden. Who are you picking 19?
With the 19th pick in the 2023 mock draft, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are selecting Deonte Banks, cornerback, Maryland.
You know, that's fitting too. Speaking of us having the Big Ten podcast, you stay in the Big Ten. We get a 3rd straight cornerback off the board. Was it always going to be a cornerback for you, Hayden?
Yeah, you know, I had my eye on a few that I really, really liked. You know, Joey Porter Jr. is really good. I had my eye on him, but, you know, Deonte Banks, a really good one. If you look on his athleticism score from Next Gen Stats, he is the 1st ranked cornerback, 98 overall. So, you know, pretty athletic guy. I think that's a nice pickup there.
Well, and he's great size too. We know that your secondary is pretty young for the most part, especially at corner. So it feels like a great pick. I guess my last question for you here is Will Levis is still on the board. It's probably unlikely that happens in the real draft, but if it does, did that ever cross your mind, the possibility of taking Will Levis?
It did. I thought about it. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not a Will Levis believer. So, you know, to pull the trigger in the first round, I just couldn't do it. Yeah. I don't believe in it, man. I just don't see it.
Well, in the way you guys are rebuilding right now, it also feels like a very strong possibility that this is a year that's not about this year. And who knows? We know Drake May and Caleb Williams are coming out next year. You guys might be in that sweepstakes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, without that, we're going to move on to number 20 here. So, with that being said, let's throw it on over there. Thank you again, Hayden. Another buddy of mine from Pigskins and Island. It's great to all reconvene. He takes another corner here, makes 3 corners and 4 picks, which throws us back into David Klaben stepping into John Snyder's shoes for the Seattle Seahawks with pick number 20. David, what are you going with?
We're doubling down on defense, baby. With the 20th pick, the Seattle Seahawks are selecting a name I can't pronounce, followed by his last name, Cansey. And
Kalijah Cansey, baby. Kalijah Cansey, D-tackle
Pitt. D-tackle Pitt. Again, kind of on the points earlier, Seattle is a really unique team where, honestly, if they drafted a lot of defense and maybe in the later rounds selected some offensive depth, it's a fun team to draft for, in my opinion. I think Cansey's a great pick for them. He might be undersized, but he can get to the quarterback. He's a great pass rusher. First step
pocket pusher.
First step quickness on that interior D line is unmatched to a lot of guys. I just think it's, you go out, you get your edge, and then you go out, you get an interior defensive lineman, and suddenly you actually help your pass defense because now you've got some pass rushers that shorten the time frame of the opposing quarterback, right? You can live with mediocre defensive backs, even average defensive backs, and they still got picks to go. I just think that you bolster the D line here, and Seattle's a little bit more fun of a team next year.
It goes into what we were saying before. As bad as it was for you to have to pick for Houston at 12, Seattle is such a fun team because it feels like they kind of get to do the best player available, have some fun. And I kind of really like doubling up on defense because the defense was so bad last year and the offense looks so good. They had a couple big tackles hit. You don't have to worry about O-line now. I fully am in support of that pick. So you get a double thumbs up for me on pick 20. We good? Sweet. That was a quick one, David.
That's what she said.
That's going to stay in, which means we're going to pick number 21, which means you can see if you're on YouTube, Stephan had a wardrobe change. He's wearing a jersey that I got to give him props. He won his fantasy football with me in it. I tanked, not a big deal. But he is wearing his champion Austin Eckler Los Angeles Chargers jersey. So with pick number 21, Stephan, let's hear it. What are you doing?
Hopefully this jersey doesn't continue the trend of players that I get end up switching teams directly after me getting the jersey. But for the Los Angeles Chargers, picking at 21 in the LOD 2023 mock draft, Quentin Johnson, the wide receiver out of Texas Christian University. Now, I know a lot of people are kind of scratching their heads. Go Horned Frogs. Is that...
Yeah, it's the Horned Frog. That's what they do. It's this stupid hand thing. It's what Hypnotoad, they call it.
Yeah, well, it is Texas Christian. Hand thing is the only thing they're doing there. Now, I know that you guys are pretty surprised about maybe
that was
that
9.5 out of 10. I had to stop you. That was a good one.
That's also what she said. The man's on fire, people. Even I know the wide receiver picks may be scratching your head. You got the likes of Keenan Allen and Mike Williams there, but don't look now. Keenan Allen just turned 31. Mike Williams is going to turn 31 here in April. Mike Williams 32, middle of the season there in October. Both of these wide receivers are done through contract through 2024. And yeah, you like Josh Palmer, who had a solid year at 700 plus yards last year. You're gonna need somebody with the likes of Justin Herbert waiting for a new contract. You got Eckler wanting money. You got Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, Derwin James, J.C. Jackson taking up a lot of money. You need to surround this team with young stars and a guy that fresh off a 60-catch, hairs under 1,100 yards in the college season for TCU, fresh off the championship run. Well, losing it, but come on. We all knew that was going to happen. Why not pick them? I think it's great. Let's get some young stars for the young quarterback there in L.A.
I have to at least ask a question that, how do I word this? if you bring in Quentin Johnson, it feels like you have three very similar wide receivers. Why did you decide to go that route and take the pterodactyl or the pterodactyl instead of Jordan Addison? I was curious about that because he's more of the burner, shifty, smaller guy. Why did you decide to go with big, like, tall, strong wide receiver again?
Well, you're not going to miss a beat when inevitably one of these guys goes down with injury, right? So when you have a certain type, you kind of learn how to stick with it. So it's just something that you want to have on that roster. You want to be able to feel like you're not skipping a beat when those guys go down. And again, the main thing is when you know what that production is, when you have a player like that around you, not only are you going to bring him into a building that you're going to learn from the best players, route running, that ability to play with that size. But now when they're gone, boom, they're filling in the shoes, cheaper, less contract, less headache, hopefully less injury ridden as well.
All right, my only other question, and I'm good to go, is that I guess it's less of a comment or a question and more of a comment. But Quentin, I almost called him Nelson. Wally, get it together. I'm out for lunch right now. Quentin Johnson is a guy that is massive, but he kind of struggled with 50-50 balls sometimes. So I feel like going to a place with Justin Herbert, where a guy that's going to put the ball exactly where you need it to be, is a place where you might be able to maximize that ceiling for a guy like him. Whereas maybe you go to another place, he's not as successful. So I'm interested to see where he ends up, but I think it would be a good home for him in LA.
And I couldn't agree more with that. And it's funny you say that. Don't forget about Mike Williams. I would argue the king of 50-50 balls right now, or at least the king of 70-20 balls of coming them down. But look at the other side. You got Derwin James and J.C. Jackson to go practice against. Don't forget about Asante Samuel Jr. as well, another stud who's going to be up and coming looking for a contract. So he's going to have his fair share of knowing how to get ready and get ready quick in the NFL.
All right. Well, that means, good job, by the way, Stephen, pick 21. We are going
21.
to number 22 now, where David is picking for division rival, the Baltimore Ravens. And dare I say, are we in for a shocker here, David?
We are, and I'm so disgusted by it because it's going to look like I'm shitting on the Ravens because I'm a Browns fan, but I'm not, and there's some thinking behind it. So let's just get into this shocker, right? So pick 22 of this wonderful draft process. The Baltimore Ravens select Will Levis.
Cast by 90.
And yikes. And the only way I could justify this is if we're still unsure of Lamar Jackson. Because if we know where he's going or where he's staying, this pick is incredibly different. This pick's probably going to be incredibly different because Will Levis isn't going to fall to 22, I don't think. I
agree with you there.
If one of the four quarterbacks falls to 22 and Lamar Jackson's status is still up in the air, I don't know how you don't draft him if you're Baltimore. It would take them a lot of willpower to not draft, especially a quote-unquote big, strong quarterback like Will Levis who, can play in the AFC North and, has been battle-tested in the SEC. You can go through that BS all you want. At 22, there's a top four quarterback on the board. I don't know how Baltimore doesn't select him. If I had my way and I knew where Lamar Jackson was going, this would have been a much easier pick. If Lamar stays, I'm guessing they go cornerback at this pick. But again, with the way that our draft fell, I just felt like I don't know how you have the willpower if you're Baltimore to pass up on the QB here when you're unsure of where yours is ever going to end up.
So, comment and a question. So, I'll start with the question first. If in this world that Will Levis is available at 22 and he's falling, did you consider instead, because you know how when guys fall, it's like you're allergic to drafting them, did you consider going Hendon Hooker here that some people actually have much higher, and instead, because he kind of fits with the quarterbacks they have in that room, albeit Tyler Huntley, Anthony Brown. Did you think about that at all?
I really didn't. It's a solid thought, but again, if that's what Baltimore is going for, they could probably trade down, collect assets, and still get Hendon Hooker. So I think in real world, I think Baltimore's taking a cornerback here, but in loss of down world, I don't know how they pass on Will Levis here.
In comment was, I feel like Will Levis to the Ravens feels like you close your eyes and go back in time 15, 20 years, and it's Kyle Bowler all over again.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like to me.
Yes. That's what I hope for.
Now, you said if Lamar stays, you see them picking up a cornerback. Why not picking up one of these wide receivers? You know, say that a Quentin Johnson fellows. I know a Jalen Hyatt is still there on a board from Tennessee. After all this, dilemma of the wide receiver position, why not draft him another wide receiver on top of after getting Odell?
So I like that pick, or like that idea, thought, whatever we're going to call it. I thought about that. I thought about maybe Addison here. I thought about a wide receiver here, but this draft, and we've said it a couple times, this draft is really deep at receiver. And so if you're Baltimore, you can grab one of the better cornerbacks on the board now. As we saw with Baltimore last season, their corners have fallen off a bit. Humphrey's still Humphrey, but Marcus Peters, I'm just not there. There's a fall off in the rest of that cornerback room, and you need to go out and you need to get some replacements now that are young and cheap. And if you just paid Lamar Jackson, emphasis on the cheap. So I thought about receiver, but you can go out and get a good receiver in round 2. So I think that the cornerback was going to be their priority in real life.
If you guys are still with us, and you've probably been trying to drink every time you heard Will Levis's name brought up on here, you mercifully are done with that. We promise we will not bring his name up again. So congratulations. And now, thank you, David, once again. But we are going to pick 23, where Stephan is going to be selecting for his division rival, the Minnesota Vikings. Stephan, he's got it. Look at that. He's even willing to represent the rival. I'm loving this. School time.
Oh no, this is a giant. This is a Giants.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, all right. We're a little early, but
I should have got my Randy Moss from Evan Dessecker.
Yeah, but that's all right. We'll survive. 23. Pick 23. The Minnesota Vikings. Skull. What are you doing here for him?
With the 23rd pick here in the 2023 LOD NFL mock draft, the Minnesota Vikings are picked the aforementioned Jalen Hyatt, wide receiver out of Tennessee. This is after losing Minnesota Viking legend Adam Thielen this offseason. A lot of talks around Dalvin Cook potentially being on the out, cut if not traded. They're going to need another playmaker in that offense. I know Alexander Madsen's going to be able to check the box for Dalvin Cook, but we need eyes off Justin Jefferson, where sometimes in a lot of the second half of games last year, he just vanished. Right? Outside of that amazing catch that he had in Buffalo that got his gloves, shoes, and jersey in that Hall of Fame for it, I think he had maybe one target in that second half. So you have to get another playmaker, take the heat off him, because Kirk loves spreading the ball around to anyone who's not Justin Jefferson. Get a playmaker like Jalen Hyatt can be.
And he is a playmaker. He's a guy that you hear the stereotypical, he takes the top off a defense. He has that vertical speed to do that. My question again, you seem to be a little lower on Jordan Addison than a lot of people are. Why did you decide to go Jalen Hyatt here instead of the USC wide receiver?
I'm going to go with the SEC product. He did take a huge jump. The one thing that did stick out to me is you got a 1,200-yard season after combining for less than 500 yards in your career up until that point. So I just saw him a little bit more on this side. I paid a little bit more attention to the Vols. And I just think that he fits ready more in a pro-ready offense like the Minnesota Vikings, even though the LA USC Kevin O'Connell mix would make sense.
Yeah, and it was a big jump. He went from 20 and 21 catches to 67. So he's got a ton of tread on the tires. If you believe in that, then he's a guy that, especially playing opposite of Justin Jefferson, it could be a really fun pick for Minnesota.
So my question here is, why wide receiver, knowing you have one of the best in the league? And I know you kind of explained why you need a second guy, but why wide receiver now, knowing the draft is deep at wide receiver, than taking a defensive player who the Vikings desperately need after losing some and after having kind of a not so great defense?
Just taking that risk to make that next step of Minnesota being an offensive first, like we're going to outscore you more than defense. I think adding a wide receiver to this position is going to be more beneficial than adding a piece of tape to things that has a lot more cracks that are leaking. In this case, right, I think that they can build within. With the young players that they have in now, there's going to be a lot more depth and a lot more other picks that they can address these in those rounds. A couple other veterans that they can bring in during that time too. I just think with this, the offense, because if you shut down Justin Jefferson and your defense sucks, your team's not going anywhere. Give their team
make
another
his strength
lifeline.
really strong. Yeah, like make his strength even stronger.
Exactly.
I kind of get what you're saying there. But that means we're throwing it over now to Jack Huepler, who's going to be drafting for the Jacksonville Jaguars. We'll throw it there now.
Duval.
And now we welcome on another special guest. He's a Browns fan, but tonight he's doubling as a Jacksonville Jaguar fan, playing the role of the GM for the Jags. So, we have to welcome on longtime listener, Jack Huepler. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you, Wally?
I'm doing really well. It's great to have you again, and you're doing us a favor picking for the Jags. So, without further ado, we'll throw it right on over there. What are you doing with the 24th pick?
All right. With the 24th pick in the NFL draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars select Brian Branch, defensive back, Alabama.
So, the first question's got to be, we know this is kind of a soft safety class, but the Jaguars, there's a desperate need there. Why did you decide to go first-round safety opposed to maybe doing it later down the draft?
Well, there's a couple options here for me. So offensive line was a big issue. Defensive line also kind of a little suspect with the total sack numbers weren't great. But I'm just hoping that defensive back will solve that issue as well, since they're 30th in pass defense DVOA last year. And offensive line, I saw
Look at
two
this
of them.
guy bringing DVOA into it.
Exactly. I'm prepared, man.
Love it.
But yeah, the two offensive linemen I would have considered were taken very early in this process, so I guess I kind of made my decision easier.
So you said D-line's a little suspect. Why go a polished safety who's not great at covering, is more of like a tackler, right? He's only missed 4 tackles in his entire career at Alabama. When somebody like Brian Breezy's still on the board, a defensive interior, versatile, big, can rush the passer, play outside the tackles. Why go safety when a big defensive lineman is still on the board?
Yeah, so I was thinking about that, but I just liked Brian Branch's versatility since the pass defense is so bad. Like, he played corner at Alabama a little bit, but he might be projecting more as a safety in the NFL. But, if an injury happens or if maybe just in training camp he looks better as a cornerback, he gives you that versatility. And they took Trayvon Walker first round last year, so I'm not sure if they were going to double dip 2 drafts in a row. But I mean, maybe that could easily be a possibility too. They need help they need help in a few, especially in the trenches and the defensive back. So
well, don't get David started on the trenches, and I'm not going to be here to asking why not a different positional group, because that's going to be my question. I think you've nailed them on the both. I'm here to kind of back you up a little bit. Jags gave up the 5th most yards last year, as well as the 10th most touchdowns, right in the middle of the pack. So I think addressing that right off the bat, Alabama, I think the name on there speaks for it a little bit more, but kudos to you, Jack. Way to stick it to him.
I tried.
Well, Jack, we thank you again so much for coming on here. The AFC South Division champion Jaguars going safety here. Thank you so much for coming on again.
All right, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Maybe next year we can get you on with your own team again.
Yeah, we'll see if they have a draft pick or not. But
thank you. We're going to throw it on over to pick number 25. Thank you again, Jack. First safety's off the board. Finally see one. And that brings back to Stephan. Now the Giants jersey makes a lot of sense. He's about to pick number 25 for the G-Men. What are you doing?
For the New York Football Giants, picking here at 25th in the 2003 LOD mock draft, Osiris Torrance, offensive guard out of Florida. If you're a Giants fan, NFC East fan, NFL fan, you know how porous the Giants' offensive line has been. Closer to the last decade. Over the last 6 years, they've given up tied for the sixth most sacks. It's just under 280 sacks over that time. They were able to address their left tackle need with Evan Neal at the number 7 pick last year. Came on a little bit stronger as well. But even then, their offensive line was horrible.
Yeah.
If you remember that week 5, week 6 game where Dallas had like 25, 30 pressures just in that game alone, it was pretty bad. Not only that, you just paid the man that Dallas was pressuring that many times, and you're still trying to get Saquon, A, paid, and B, long-term paid to get stuck around. You want to bolster this O-line. Everything outside of wide receiver is what you need here, but protect your most financial assets, or your biggest assets, I should say.
Well, the big fella. You finally go with the big fella. It was a wonder where he'd go in the first round, because it feels like he is going there. 330 pounds. He might not be the best pass protector per se, but what he can do in run blocking is going to help that passing or pass protection in itself. And he can play either side, right or left guard. I actually really like the pick, and it definitely feels like offensive line is a must early and often for the Giants in this draft. So 2 thumbs up again on this pick for me. David, you're good? Yeah, I guess guards are not exactly the most fun thing to talk about, but hey, that's what we're doing here. And we're going to throw it over now for the 26th pick. We have Dakota Price picking for his Dallas Cowboys. So we'll go there now and see what he's going to do. Now, with the 27th pick, we have a very special guest. If you're a listener of this show, you'll know the name. But picking for her Buffalo Bills, Abbey Turner. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Wally. How are you?
Well, it's awesome to have you. I'm so happy to finally, it's been a long time coming.
I know.
Feels like Steven's not here, but he gave you the Parlay Princess. You are a celebrity on our show, so we're so excited to hear you give our Buffalo Bill pick and hopefully get to talk a little Abbey Turner creative as well.
Absolutely. So for the 27th pick in the 2023 NFL Draft, the Buffalo Bills select DeJuan Jones, offensive tackle, The Ohio State University.
So first things first, this guy is basically known as a solar eclipse to the world. He's a massive human being, but the Bills really don't have a lot of holes. So I was interested how you landed on DeJuan Jones, because you really could have done almost anything here. What was it about DeJuan Jones that you wanted?
So DeJuan Jones, absolutely massive, devastating. Where I think he's really going to excel with the Bills is, well, first of all, his past. He has no sacks on 393 pressure situations. Extremely.
Look at that, bringing the stats, Abby.
You know I came prepared. But really what I think we need to be focused on is more protection for Josh Allen. Josh Allen is the heart and soul of the Bills. We got to be careful with him. I think he's kind of put himself in some compromising positions with the run game last year. So I really want to basically kind of improve that run game, and DeJuan Jones is the guy to do it.
David was actually saying the other day, because the way this draft was falling out, he was like, it makes too much sense for the Bengals to pick behind you to take DeJuan Jones, and instead you vulture him right before. So you got our full-on approval of the pick. But stepping aside from football for a second, I mentioned before, you are our proud sponsor of this show. We're massive Abbey Turner fans. Can you tell us a little bit about Abbey Turner Creative?
Absolutely. So my background is really in photography. That art and photography has been my absolute love for so many years now. I've been practicing it for over 10 years. Went to The Ohio State University for it and found the natural fit in, basically bringing art into business and finding that place in marketing. Abbey Turner Creative, we offer just a wide array of creative services, photography, website design, basically everything in between. I love being a sponsor. I absolutely love Loss of Down, love supporting it. So I'm just so happy to be here and so happy to be on talking to you guys.
And that's what at Sawdad and Sapphire, how you can get a hold of her there. We're going to try our best this year to possibly get a little collab with one another, make this better for both of us in the long run. But it's been such a privilege and an honor to have you. We're massive fans of you, and we're so excited to see how much further you get to go.
Thank you so much, Wally. It's really a pleasure to be here.
That's great, and that means that we are going to throw it now to the Cincinnati Bengals, who are not going to be taking DeJuan Jones, as we just figured out.
Sorry.
We'll throw it over to Alex now. And now we welcome on a very smart man. We're talking about a guy that has JH at EDU in his email, so you know the guy's brilliant. Cincinnati Bengals fan, picking for them at 28. Alex, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing swell, Walter. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing wonderful now that we have you here. Everybody knows I'm a closet Bengals fan basically on this show, so I'm very excited to hear what you're doing here. So without further ado, Alex, take her away.
All right. With the 29th pick and the Loss of Down mock draft, the Cincinnati Bengals select Myles Murphy, defensive end from Clemson.
You did it. You went Myles Murphy. You've been talking to me about it for days, that if it made sense, you were going to try to add to pass rush. Why was that your top priority going into this? Because Bengals really are in a good spot. Best player available feels likely.
Feels likely, and when I'm looking at the board here, that felt like the best player available. It seemed like he slipped down. I could see him going even, closer to like the 10 to the 15 pick range. So for me, I couldn't have let that value slide any farther. Because I know somebody like Pittsburgh at the top end of the second round, somebody like that is definitely going to grab him.
And that feels like a Pittsburgh Steeler pick, doesn't it?
It feels like it, and then he'll turn into a Hall of Famer, just like anybody the Ravens draft in the first round too.
Well, that's okay. Right before you got to your pick, DeJuan Jones went. David's not here with this for this pick. He thought that felt like a lock to you there. If he was not there, or if he was available, was DeJuan Jones someone you were considering, or is he not really part of what you think makes too much sense for this Bengals team?
Right. I think so. I think Miles Murphy is just above and away in terms of tiers. I just think he's a higher ranked player.
Okay.
So when I'm looking at this from like a zoomed out view, I see a lot of Bengals fans. We want a running back. Oh, we want tight end. We want this position, that. No. Okay. At this point, the Bengals are so fortunate enough. I remember this vividly too. Back in I think 2013 or 2014, the Bengals had really talented roster. They went Tyler Eifert. They shocked everybody. I don't think anybody was expecting them to go tight end in that draft. So I kind of want to make a splash here. I know a lot of people. They like Joseph Asai. They like Trey Hendrickson. Some even like Zack Carter in the middle. I believe 3 technique is what he plays as far as a pass rusher. But I just think in the loaded AFC, I mean, you're talking about Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers may be coming over. It just seems like this is the worst time for the Bengals to be good. But I think an elite pass rusher with double-digit sack upside could be something that would be key to stopping like a Mahomes or an Allen in a deep playoff run. I just think that position makes a ton of sense for the Bengals here, even if they might have some quality players there right now.
Well, one of the things we love to talk about on this show is that running backs, don't take them in the first round. Don't pay them after the first contract. If Bijan Robinson is not there at 29 or 28, there doesn't really feel like a purpose to take Gibbs or to take one of these other high-profile backs, because you're going to be able to get a very good player day 2, day 3, and it's the same with the tight ends. This tight end class, at this point,
loaded.
Only Michael Myers gone. So, yeah, you can kind of play chicken and hope that one's there in the second or third round.
Yeah, and I think the Bengals, I believe, hosted some visits. I think they hosted some of the likes of like the Sam Laportas of the world or the Luke Musgraves as far as the tight end goes. Look, I think Jahmyr Gibbs would have been a fine pick here, but to me, I think the Bengals need to prioritize a back that they can get deeper into the draft. This is a very deep running back class along with tight end. I think they could wait, get a lower caliber player, but maybe somebody who could pass block. It seems like Samaje Perine, a lot of Bengals fans are upset he left, not because of his rushing or maybe his receiving, but his pass blocking was truly unnoticed. It's the same thing with Giovanni Bernard. A lot of people from outside the Bengals were like, he's such a dynamic player, and he was. But I think nitty-gritty, he was an excellent pass blocker for Andy Dalton in the backfield. And I just think Jahmyr Gibbs, he has a very elite skill set, very quick, very good. Same with Dalton Kincaid, excellent pass catcher.
I know you were high on him. You thought about it.
I did. I won't lie to you. I did think about going Dalton here. But it seems like the Bengals are committed to staying put where they are. It seems like they had a really nice buy low with Irv Smith Jr., still very young, coming off of an injury. But the Vikings had a lot of hope for him. But he just can't stay healthy. So if the Bengals could turn him into somebody like Hayden Hurst was for them last year, I think the sky's the limit for Irv. And I think that shows that the Bengals are pretty content. They also re-signed Drew Sample, which is excellent blocking depth. Terrible second-round pick, but a great blocker at the tight end position. So that kind of screams to me they want to spend their first round, slot money elsewhere.
And I say it all the time now, but Joe Burrow is tight end Robin Hood. He's going to get whoever is there paid, whether it's Irv Smith, whether it be Drew Sample. But Alex, we want to thank you so much for coming on. You've been one of our biggest supporters since day one. we can't thank you enough. Alex Pessell, Pest City, bitch. He's the man. Thank you so much. Appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me, Wally. I'm proud to represent Houday Nation. Hey, Skyline Chili, new sponsor of the Cincinnati Bengals. This has been coming for years and years. Fans have begged for this. We do not stand for Gold Star Chili. We are Skyline Chili people, okay? So we finally feel represented. It's a new day in Cincinnati. This is the turning point. This is a Super Bowl run.
This is a great time to cut him off. We're going to pick number 29. Let's throw it over there now. We want to thank Alex again for picking for the Cincinnati Bengals. The Houday Nation is what he called it. Although, let's be serious, there's only one nation. It's Raider Nation. But we are now going to go to the guy that had quarterback nation, Raider Nation for the last 9 years. That's the New Orleans Saints. And I'm going to make this easy, guys. With the 30th pick in the 2023 NFL LOD mock draft, the New Orleans Saints are taking Adetomiwa Adebawore. And that pronunciation was drilled. Your boy's been practicing.
How long?
I have it up in front of me, and before we started recording, probably said it 10 straight times. I was 50-50. I was going to do what Evan did earlier, and I'm like, I'm not going to be able to get this out. But I'll even do it again. I'm going to flex my muscles. Adetomiwa Adebawore. Drilled it. Guy plays 3 technique. He's going to be a guy. He's listed as a defensive end. A lot of people think he's probably going to slide in to tackle, and he's a pocket pusher. He's a guy that you're going to see when you're watching his tape, whether it's late day 1 or early day 2. They're going to show what he did against Ohio State. Stephen, you and I were in Vegas. We watched that weather game together. This kid pushed the pressure all day. It was C.J. Stroud's worst game as a collegiate quarterback. I know weather was a factor, but so was this kid. In the pocket pushing ability, it feels like a home run for a New Orleans Saints team that's finally starting to show little signs of regression on defense. They're going to want to re-shore everything up.
I love the pick. I mean, that's a great – he is arguably the freakiest athlete in the whole draft. I think he set for a guy that weighs – I want to say he weighs 280 plus. I think he set –
He weighs 280. Yeah.
So he set the record for fastest 40 time by a guy 280 or more by almost 0.2 seconds, which is...
Wasn't it like a 4.4?
Yeah, it's astonishing. It might as well be a goddamn running back at 6'5" or whatever insane size he is. But he's
sounds like Jerome.
He could be. He'd be better.
There's
he's
some
faster.
running backs that would kill for that. Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, what a freak athlete! I think it's a great pick. I think it's a fun pick for New Orleans.
All right, that means that we're going to throw it over to our final guest. Second time you will have heard from him, Zack Youssef. With the Philadelphia Eagles, he's picking 30. I said pick 30 for the Saints. I'm a mush. It's 29 for the Saints. Zack Youssef now, we're going to see what he does. Does Howie go offensive line, defensive line like always, or does he mix it up? Throw it to Zack now. So now coming back for the 30th pick now. We heard him earlier. He took Paris Johnson out of Ohio State. Zack, let's hear number 30 from you.
Sure. With the 30th pick, the Eagles are going to draft defensive tackle Maisie Smith out of Michigan. Kind of picking up from where we talked about earlier, and I got to be honest, picking at this pick is not that fun because there's a lot of players that went before him that I really wanted to pick in this spot. That's also why I think the Eagles probably aren't going to pick at this spot, whether it's a trade up or down. It makes too much sense, and also they don't have a lot of mid-round picks. But anyway, back to the actual selection itself. This one is hard because it depends what kind of defensive tackle they want, I guess. Do they want a bigger guy who can like stuff the run, or do they want like a pass rusher? And I think you could go either way because I think the run defense last year, especially up the middle, was soft. And I think they realized that as a team. So I wouldn't be surprised if they go someone a little bit bigger on the inside, especially with the pass rushers they have. But I could also see them doing the exact opposite, getting someone next to Jordan Davis, who's a good pass rusher, who can bring the heat that way. Macy Smith is one option. I thought about the one guy out of Clemson, I think.
Ryan Breesy.
Yeah, that was another option too. But yeah, and also I think it'd be funny to draft someone from OSU and Michigan in the first round together. So why not?
So I have, like, you've touched on what I really want to ask here. Smith is an interesting pick. He's a 337-pound nose tackle who can kind of move around on the interior, but ultimately that pick gives you two nose tackles that are 340 pounds plus in Jordan Davis and Mozzie Smith, or Maisie Smith, however you pronounce it, who will, I think, would share snaps more than play next to each other. And I guess my question for you is, and you brought it up, right, because you thought about Brian Breesy, but why the nose tackle versus somebody like Brian Breesy who's a better pass rusher, who not only is a higher prospect, but somebody who's also 300 pounds, but has the capability to move outside the tackles and rush the passer, and plays the interior well, kind of a more versatile player and a more utility D lineman, which in my experience in the whole 2 seasons I've paid attention to the Eagles, no offense, is kind of like the Howie Roseman mentality, which is we take a lot of D linemen to get a rotation going, or utility D linemen. We do a lot of things because those trench players are what builds these Eagles teams that not only won a Super Bowl but made a Super Bowl. Like, this is the Howie Roseman mentality, is the trenches, right? So I guess ultimately why the second nose tackle over a utility D lineman who might be better who might be a better replacement for somebody like Hargrave than Maisie Smith?
That is a excellent question. And that's a super valid point too, because I think in the years past, the Eagles would have done exactly what you did. Draft the guy who can just penetrate, go up the middle, and just sack the quarterback, just flat out. But I think the Jordan Davis pick number 1 last year kind of signified something a little bit different. I think their defenses, and especially now because they don't have Gannon anymore and they hired Desai, and it seems like he likes to do the multiple fronts, not just one look. And they've been kind of shifting that way personnel-wise too, especially on not just D-line, but also other positions. So I'm curious to see if they actually do draft more bigger run-stopping defensive tackles, because they also have guys who can play multiple positions. Like Brandon Graham kicks inside on third downs to play D-tackle and rush from that way. So they have guys who can also play like multiple spots, even not necessarily a defensive tackle in that spot. But it's a super valid argument, because frankly, they could absolutely go a totally different direction. They might not even go defensive tackle at this spot. I could see them trading up to try to grab a corner. Same reason as offensive tackle, but no, it's a good point.
Let's say we're the luckiest podcast in the world, and this is exactly how the draft goes. You still have a couple corners that aren't taken.
Emmanuel Forbes is the one that jumps out.
Right, like you still have a couple corners that would be phenomenal picks here. I think to your point, I don't think the Eagles are standing still at these picks. I think they do move up and down, but obviously on this podcast for all you listening, we can't do 30 trades of what people really want to do and whatnot. But I do think you're right. I think maybe they stick at 10, and if their guy is available, but if he's not, they're definitely trading down, maybe collecting another first rounder next year or something like that. But I don't hate the pick of Mozzie Smith. I think it's a good pick. Because to your point, you do have a lot of utility D linemen, and while you lose Hargrave this year, you don't necessarily need that production in the pass rush in the interior. It was a luxury, but you don't necessarily need it. What you do need to do is stop the run, especially with a guy like Jordan Davis on the other side, who ultimately he's only going to play probably 50% of snaps every game. So you definitely need somebody who's going to plug some holes.
So my only follow-up, and we'll let you go, Zach, is just going on what we mentioned before, the Howie Roseman stuff. This, again, I like the fact that you're going with what he does, and you can get a guy like DJ Turner or someone like that in a corner in the second or third round. So I don't have anything else, Steven. I don't know if you do, but you're the man, Zach. Oh, you do have one more. I thought you said you didn't. Go ahead, Steven.
No, I wanted one more that kind of came up. I know you said you got the 30th pick, but from round 3 to round 7, there's 125 picks right there that you guys don't have one. With you expecting to move back, I know you've already harped on you moving forward. If you move back, what did you want to see? What kind of compensation would you want to see in return? Because like Wally said, you can get some of these guys in later. There's some gems in that 4th, 5th, 6th round. Those are where some of those people come out of. What do you want to see there?
Yeah, honestly, if they could trade back, maybe I don't think it would matter too much how far they traded back. I guess maybe staying within the 2nd round, maybe picking up a 4th or 5th, something like that.
Well, can I interrupt you for a second? Would you rather see them trade down for a 1st or a 2nd next year, or would you rather see them trade down maybe 10, even 30 is probably a good spot to collect this at, but would you rather see them trade down to collect maybe a 3rd, 4th, 5th in this draft, or even a 3rd and 4th and maybe a 7th next year? Like there's a lot of compensation there. Would you rather see them collect more picks this year, or because they're such a solidly built team, and Howie, I questioned him earlier this offseason, but he's said, "Fuck you, David," straight to my face. Would you rather see him collect picks this year, or maybe bolster some first-round talent next year when you're going to lose maybe even more talent like your Fletcher Coxes, like other players like that, or Lane Johnson even if maybe the Paris Johnson pick doesn't work out? I don't know. But would you rather see him collect a high pick next year or 2 high picks next year, or trade down and collect maybe 3 picks this year or 2 picks this year and 1 pick next year?
So that's a good question, because I'm going to stick with keep picks for this year, because next year I think they're scheduled to have a ridiculous amount of picks, over I think at least 10, and that's the Saints trade that they still have a 2nd round pick from, and they also are going to get compensatory picks from Javon Hargrave and all the free agents they lost, which they're scheduled to get a few. So I think they have a lot of ammo going into next year. I would rather refill the defense this year at least a little bit, because there's still a lot of positions on the defense that are kind of question marks. Like they need a safety. They didn't get a safety. They probably need a backup to Slay and Bradbury, because if one of them gets hurt, that's not going to be good. Linebacker is always a pressing need. They won't draft one high, but it's always a need. So yeah, I think grab just whatever picks they can get this year in the mid round, just to fill the defense.
And I'm sorry, I'm pressing you, because I really love the Eagles' position this year in the draft. Like, there's a lot of things they can do, right? There's a lot of roster building moves. So I'd love to ask you, because I love to get your opinion, right? But let's say, they just signed Jalen Hurts. They just signed him to a huge contract. Now, his salary cap doesn't hit as hard as you think it would. So then, following up on what you just said, right? Next year, you have a boatload of capital. This year, let's say you trade down from 10 and you end up getting Brian Branch. You trade down somewhere, you end up getting Brian Branch at safety, right? You're in a position where you might have traded down, but you've gained picks either this year or next year. And ultimately, you got to think for the future, where there are probably, and this is how I think for the Browns, but there are probably 3 to 5 players on the roster that you keep long-term. You're going to pay a significant amount of money, right? Knowing you've got a lot of capital next year, knowing that you could get some more capital this year, who are your 3, maybe 5 players that you're absolutely keeping? And let's say you trade down, do you still, knowing that those are your 3 to 5 players you're keeping, do you hold on the stance that this year you want to collect the picks, or do you go into next year knowing that maybe you've got your left tackle who's probably signed for another 2 or 3 years, who, yes, you're keeping, but you don't have to worry about that for that contract for another 2 years? and I'm losing myself here because I'm so excited because I there's a lot here, right? Like there's a lot here, and I'm thinking in 4 different directions, so I apologize to everyone
Well,
listening.
I was going to say, let's let Zack get the final word because we're going a little long.
I know,
on
I'm
this
sorry.
pick.
I'm like the Eagles excite me. So obviously, who are your 3 to 5 players? Does it knowing you list that out? Does it affect really who you want to select this year versus next, or how many picks you want to get this year versus next?
Real quick question: 3 to 5 players, like just in total on a team, or just
who
one,
are you keeping long term? Because in the Browns, it's Myles Garrett, it's the 2 fucking guards. I'd love to keep Nick Chubb long term, but I'm not gonna think about that, right? It's Denzel Ward, Nick Chubb's not staying long term, and it's Deshaun Watson, right? So those are my players who I think are the core building pieces of the team. Who are yours?
Yeah. I gotta say, first, Jordan Mailata is one because of his age, and he's still an ascending player in my opinion. Like he really just started playing football like 4 years ago. Like he could conceivably get better. Landon Dickerson is another one. Like he's been healthy, he's been excellent since he's joined the team, so he's got to be one. We assume Hurts is already like building block. He's already one of the building blocks. Goddard, I think, absolutely is. Depending on the time period, A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith are. And I've already just named the offensive building blocks. That's also why I think, in general, how I view this draft is I think the Eagles would rather double down on offense and also make sure they support Hurts no matter what. I think they learned their lesson, or how he learned his lesson from Wentz, and just the roster team buildup, and also all of the injuries that happened and just everything. I think he's learned a couple lessons from that, and now he understands offense is king. So you got your quarterback now. Whatever you have to do, just protect him, support him, do whatever you want. And if the defense takes a couple hits in the interim, that's what happens, and then they can try to rebuild next year. But I think the priority is offense.
Zack, thank you so much for coming on. Fly, Eagles, fly. Good luck trying to repeat next year.
It's my time now, Wally.
Team.
It's my time now.
It is David's time on, which means we're going to say hello to Zack, and we're going to get the final pick of the first round. But thank you so much, Zack, for coming on.
Thank you, guys. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you again, Zack. Second time, best time, as always. And that means we're going into our final pick of the draft. And David, that means you're drafting for the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. So what are they doing at 31?
I don't know. This was the hardest pick I've ever had in my life because in theory,
it's still wide open. Nobody else has touched it. You can change your mind right now.
My smart brain says Brian Breesy, a defensive interior who can play on the edge, a guy I've been talking about all draft long, and a guy who fits a now need on the Chiefs. But my fun brain says Jordan Addison, because why not put a full route tree receiver next to Travis Kelce being thrown to by arguably the greatest quarterback of all time, and just build upon the unstoppable offense that is the Kansas City Chiefs. However, I do think that D-line mattered last year, so with the last pick in the first round, I am going Brian Breesy. I just think it's a smarter pick, but if you told me that if Jordan Addison's still there at 31 and Kansas City sees that, they're going to jump on that in a heartbeat, it wouldn't shock me.
With how much you've been bringing up Breesy too, I felt like this is the poetic ending to this draft. And I think it's just me willing it not to happen. I really can't afford another weapon with Patrick Mahomes. I can't afford that.
NFL can't afford that.
So I think this is the right pick. Yeah. I also was thinking too, I know this is kind of side talk. I've been sitting here in my head thinking about me being in person for this draft next week. And the part that is eating me alive the most is typically at these drafts, after the home team picks, the crowd thins out super much. It's really comfortable. You get more room. The Chiefs are picking with the last pick in the first round. So I'm going to not only be stuffed miserable like a sardine around a bunch of people MFing me because I'm in my silver and black, but I'm going to have to watch them take Jordan Addison because David's putting it into the universe here. So thanks a lot. That's all I have. All right.
I got nothing. I'm just letting David do his thing.
Well, that does it then. We are through our 31 picks. Before we wrap up today, I want to thank every single one of you who came and was a part of this. It was a blast. All three of us had a great time. I know it was a little last minute. It was a little chaotic. Next year will be better. You guys are all welcome back. We're excited to have you back. And this show would not be the same without you every single week. So we appreciate you. And with that said, does anybody have any takeaways from this mock? Whether it be a winner, a loser, a pick you loved, a pick you hated, any final thoughts at all?
Here's my only thought. This is going to be the most inaccurate mock draft in the history of mock drafts, but God, it was a lot of fun.
False.
Love it. Did you say false or balls?
False. If
okay, I was like, why?
I can't remember. I can't remember what I said. Can't remember what I said false to. But Joey Porter going to drop into the Lions, I think is going to be my biggest takeaway. If that actually happens here, that Butson predicted, that's going to be huge for that secondary, and that's going to be a true 0 to a top 5 secondary jumping in potentially.
My only couple picks that I have 3 I actually really, really liked and thought they made a ton of sense here. I really thought that Broderick Jones to Tennessee was a fantastic fit, especially for a team that really is going to be going into the dark days of a rebuild. It's smart to do this now. Lock up a guy you're going to have long term. That's one. I thought Casey Mock did a fantastic job with the Pittsburgh pick. In the event the cornerbacks start falling, Gonzalez is a home run, and he feels like such a stealer. He plays like a linebacker in a cornerback's body. Thought that was fantastic. It fits their MO. And last but not least, we have to give props to the Parlay Princess, Abbey Turner Creative, our sponsor, taking DeJuan Jones. I wanted him to fall into the early second for my Raiders, but it feels like a great place for him. You get the big guy blocking for Joshy, as you said. So you know what? Love it. I think it's great. And those are, I guess, my 3 big winners coming out of this invisible fake mock draft we did. And with that said, guys, you know what to do. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. First of all, what is it, Stephen? You're really good at this, so I'm going to throw it over to you, let you do the sign-off part, because this is what you kill, and this is not my realm. So take it away, Stephen.
First and foremost, everybody make sure you're giving love to Wally. He kicked ass, slaved over doing all of this. He was the ringleader in here. So, Wally, you're the man for doing this. Can't wait for it next year. But with that, that's going to bring us to another episode. Make sure to like, comment. Oh, see, now I don't know.
I got in your head. I got in your head.
You like, you comment, subscribe for Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Lost Him Down, and make sure you retweet on Twitter _Lost. Shout out to Tabbies as well as Abbey Turner Creative. Let's have a nice weekend, Wally. Enjoy the living hell out of some Kansas City barbecue.
Oh, I'm going to come back looking even bigger. I'm going to have some brisket. I'm going to have some pulled pork. It's going to be delicious. Good luck to your Packers and Browns. I know the Browns ain't picking until probably like round 7, but you know what? I hope you have a great time. So love you guys, and we will see you back here probably next Monday to give a recap of the draft. Enjoy this little stretch off, and once again, thank each and every one of you. You guys were terrific. We'll see you next time.